My Secret Good Luck Charm, written by Jacqueline Wiest, narrated by Callie Manon. For Heidi, my St. Patrick's Day loving daughter, just like her mama. Chapter 1. There's nothing more exciting than watching the clock move to midnight, signaling a new day, or a new month, or even a new year. For me, the best time to watch the clock is when it tells me that it's March. Mom said I couldn't start celebrating St. Patrick's Day until March 1st, and every year it seemed to take longer to hit my favorite month. Hi, my name is Heidi, and I am obsessed with St. Patrick's Day. Good thing there's not actually a support group for that, or I'd probably be stuck there for the entire month. Or year. It wasn't that I had Irish in my veins, although I'm pretty sure there's an Irish great uncle once removed through marriage, or something. It was the very thought of the greenest holiday of the year. Leprechauns, plaid, Irish blessings, all of it. Where did I get this crazy obsession, you ask? I actually don't know. It just kinda happened. And my poor schoolmates had to deal with it every year. They loved it. Okay, maybe not everyone. I mean, I heard the giggles and snickers as I walked past clad from head to toe in green. And I'd only gone on 1 or 2 dates since I got to high school, but at least I was happy, right? Yo, Heidi, are you with me? Jody waved her hand in front of my face. Yeah. I blinked and shook my head, wishing it wasn't still February 28th. What's up? She narrowed her eyes. You were going all Irish on me again, weren't you? No. Maybe. I squeezed my books to my chest. I was just trying to decide what outfit to wear first. It's my last year here, so I need to make it awesome. I know. Go with a regular t-shirt and jeans like every other student here. Jody waved at her crush, Dylan. Why those two didn't just hook up was beyond me. I stopped, causing a 5-student pileup. Take that back. Jody grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. You know I won't. Also, can you please not cause accidents in the hallway? Pretty sure you almost gave the captain of the soccer team a concussion after running into the head cheerleader. Maybe they shouldn't have been kissing. I switched out my books and shut my locker. Besides, I have the sign on my back for a reason. Yes, the one your parents bought you at a truck stop that is clearly a souvenir. No one is going to pay attention to it. Jody rolled her eyes. Oh, there's Jordan. I'll catch you after class? I waved and continued on to physics. There was only one more seat left, so I slid into it and made sure I had my homework out. Mr. Spitzer was a no-nonsense teacher, and everyone was usually on their best behavior in his class. That meant no daydreaming of moving to Ireland and no doodling on my papers. It wasn't usually a problem, though. I actually liked this class. We handed in our assignments, then took the tests that were given to us. A few groans and whispered last-minute reminders went up around me, but I was ready. Dad hadn't studied all night with me for nothing. Not that he had to, since I already knew it. He just loved science. Helps when he's an actual rocket scientist. There were a few students who finished before me, but only because I wanted to check my answers a few times. Mom always told me that I needed to trust my first answer, but I didn't always believe that. I mean, what if we weren't sure and just filled in the answers with random letters until we could remember what the actual solution was? Not that I would ever do such a thing. I signed my name at the top with a flourish and took it up to the front. Mr. Spitzer didn't lift his head as he took it from me. He was too interested in whatever book he had laid out in front of him. I was pretty sure I could have had Jody turn in my test, and he wouldn't have noticed. With that test done, I only had my English exam, and then I'd be completely done for spring break. They were doing it way early this year, which was both a blessing and a curse. I'd only get half a day tomorrow to show off my first St. Patrick's Day outfit. but that also meant a week of no school. I'd take the no school in a heartbeat. Jody met me after class and we walked to English together. I'm so nervous for this. I couldn't concentrate on my math test because of this one. You'll do fine. It's just an essay. I sat down and shoved my bag under the desk. Easy for you to say, she mumbled. I suppose you aced the physics test as well? I shrugged. I don't know. He wasn't even grading when we left. Jody laughed. You know you did. Maybe. I waited impatiently for Mr. Carlson to start. I wanted to get this test over with. Senioritis had hit almost as hard as my obsession with all things Irish, and spring break was just a couple of days away. I wanted my break. After showing off one of my newest outfits tomorrow, of course. I was certain the school board had decided to put spring break in March just so I couldn't enjoy spreading St. Patrick's Day cheer with the school. Hey, it's a thing. It's too bad Mr. Carlson didn't have a little of that cheer. He was too busy making us write essays on boring things like themes in historical fiction to care about what was going on around him. Not that I didn't enjoy what we were reading. Historical fiction was a favorite of mine, but I liked reading them to escape, not to analyze the themes and how they relate to today. I finished the last essay question a few minutes before the bell would ring and took it up to Mr. Carlson. Here you go. Thanks, Miss Simmons. Thank you for using a pencil this time. He set the paper next to him and went back to grading the other tests. You're welcome. I went back to my desk and set my pencil in my bag right next to my color assortment of pens. And by colored assortment, I meant different shades of green. And a couple of yellows because they worked well for gold. The last time we'd taken a test, I forgot a pencil and had to use my seaweed green pen. It was the closest to black I had, but I couldn't erase it. Not good when writing essays. Jody handed hers in right as the bell rang, and she didn't seem quite as happy with her test as I had been with mine. She grumbled about the difference between Emily Bronte and Charlotte Bronte on our way to lunch. I'm sure you did fine. Stop worrying so much, or you'll have wrinkle lines for spring break. I grabbed a tray. Besides, those two were on last week's test. No! Her eyes widened. Please don't tell me that. I was sure it was on this week's test. Okay, they were on this week's test, but the look on your face was priceless. I had to jump back to avoid her fist from hitting me in the shoulder. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Jody shook her head and took the roll the lunch lady handed her. I don't know why I still believe anything you say. I shrugged. It's my charm. Who would ever believe I could lie to anyone? Yeah, I'm sure that's it. The loudspeaker crackled overhead, but it was too loud in the cafeteria to hear. I sighed and sat at our usual table. One of these days, they'll realize that trying to get our attention in this chaos is futile. I doubt it. Jody took a bite of her burger. Oh my gosh, it's Dylan. He's coming this way. I turned to find him. Huh, he really is. Hey, Dylan, sup? He raised an eyebrow. You need to go to the office to be checked out. Wait, what? I looked down at my lunch. Right now? Yeah, your parents are in there looking rather frantic. Dylan nodded to Jody. Hey, nice job in your volleyball game last night. Jody's face went beet red. You were there? He sat down, ignoring me completely. Yeah, I heard the game was at home and decided to check it out. Well, obviously Jody wouldn't be too disappointed that I was leaving early. I grabbed my tray and waved, then headed for the office. My parents never came here. Ever. They both worked, so they'd usually call ahead if they needed to check me out. And both of them here? That couldn't be good. Mom looked up as soon as I walked in and stood from the couch. You brought your tray with you? I shrugged. It's styrofoam, and I just barely grabbed it. What's going on? Your grandma is ill. We didn't have enough time to wait for you to pack, so we did it for you. We need to go right now. Wait, we're leaving right now? During school? I shoved the lunch tray in Dad's hands. I need to go get my things. I left them standing there while I walked to my locker, my head spun with everything that had just happened. They never let me leave early unless I had an appointment, and even then, It was rare. As I mentioned before, they never showed up to pull me out of school. They gave me a car for a reason. And leaving just to go see family during class? That was unprecedented. My parents were all about the importance of school and being where you are supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there. I grabbed my things from my locker, then hurried back. Mom and Dad still stood in the attendance office right where I left them. Dad still held my food, staring at it in disgust. Maybe now he'd understand why I constantly asked if I could have food from home or drive somewhere else to get food. Okay, I think I'm ready. I took the tray from him and followed them out to the car, imagining all kinds of horrible things that could have happened to Grandma Jane. She was young, really, and the thought of something happening to her made my stomach churn. Mom and Dad spoke quietly in the front seat while I ate my lunch. It may not have been my favorite, but I was starving, and who knew when I'd get food next? My parents liked to get wherever they were going as quickly as possible, which meant few stops. Jody texted me several times, wondering what in the world was going on, if I was in trouble for fighting in the lunchroom. Apparently she thought trying to slug me was considered fighting, or what else it could be. I told her what I knew, then laid my head back against the headrest. Mom played her usual country music in the car, so I turned to the back of the car to see if she'd packed my headphones. Mom? How long do you plan to be there? They'd taken our heavy-duty suitcases that we only used when we went on longer trips to visit Grandma during the summer. We figured we'd just spend spring break there. Mom pointed to the opposite side of the car. Your headphones are there. Is your phone charged? I nodded. Only amateurs kept their phones uncharged. My parents were the worst, which is why she was constantly reminding me. Did you pack snacks? Of course! Mom held up a small bag of chips and some gummy bears. Yeah, that was going to last a few hours. I sighed and glanced out the window. Why are we going this way? Signs and businesses passed by, but they weren't the right ones. We were going in the wrong direction. Dad glanced at me through the rear-view mirror. I have to make a stop first. Sorry, sweetie, it will only take a minute. Which meant an hour or two. At least I had my headphones. I grabbed them from the bag Mom packed and something fell out on the floor of the car. My seatbelt wasn't about to let me reach down to see what it was, so I figured I'd check it when we stopped at Dad's work. My favorite song was just getting to the good part when Dad pulled into a parking lot. He stopped the car and turned it off. That wasn't the weird part. That was when Mom took her seatbelt off and opened her door as well. What in the world? I sat up and my jaw dropped. We weren't at Dad's work. We were at the airport. Grandma lived a few hours away. Not enough to take a flight. What's going on? We thought this would be a little more exciting. Grab your things and let's go. We don't want to be late. Mom grinned and went to the back of the car to get her luggage. My head spun as I followed suit and grabbed my bags. And the thing that fell out onto the floor of the car? That was my passport. My passport. Either Grandma moved suddenly, or my parents were totally lying to me. I didn't care either way. I was leaving the country. They wouldn't say anything as we rushed from the car to the shuttle so we could get to the airport. And when I asked where we were going, I'd get lame parent answers like, this way, or you'll see in a minute. Instead of going to the domestic flight section of the airport, Dad veered off toward the international terminal. Mom turned to smile at me, then continued on. Are you guys going to tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess? I had the slightest hope that maybe, just maybe, Mom and Dad had finally bought me tickets to Ireland. But that would require a lot more secrecy than either of them could handle. They couldn't keep secrets if their life depended on it. Kinda like me. It wasn't until they handed me my ticket that I finally had my questions answered. The words Dublin, Ireland stared back at me. It was real. I was really actually going to Ireland. For real. I blinked a few times, but those words stuck around. My mouth went dry. I was going to Ireland. Mom laughed. Surprise, sweetie. We wanted to treat you to a fun trip for your senior year. I can't believe we got away with it for this long. This is really where we're going. Yep. Mom reached over and squeezed my shoulder while Dad took all our luggage to check it in. I blinked. And Grandma? Mom cleared her throat. Grandma Jane is fine. But we didn't completely lie. Your great-grandma Fiona is sick, and we're going to see her while we're in Ireland. I have a great-grandma? I mean, I know I have one, but I thought they were long gone. I handed Dad my passport and turned back to Mom. Yes, but she's lived off on her own for a few years. She disowned everyone and moved to New York, where she met an Irishman who whisked her away. I stared at her. Mom, you know how much I love Ireland. Why didn't you tell me all this before? Mom smiled and brushed my hair away from my face. I told you, she disowned all of us. I just found her a couple weeks ago, and even then, I wasn't sure if she would let us visit. You just planned this trip 2 weeks ago? That would explain how they were able to keep it secret. No, we've had a plan since the beginning of the year. But when Mom told me she'd heard from Fiona, I decided to reach out and see if we could visit while we were there. Dad put his arm around both of us. Come on, we're holding up the line. Mom can tell you more about it while we wait for our flight. I pulled away from him. You knew about all this and didn't tell me? Why do you think I spent so much time in my office for the last few months? He winked and nodded toward one of the gates. Here we are. I'll change what I said before. The only thing more exciting than seeing the clock change to a new month, or day, or year, was being able to do that in Ireland. Chapter 2. Okay, so I missed the 1st of March in Ireland because we were on the airplane. But still, I didn't care. I'm just glad Mom was nice enough to pack all my green stuff so I could wear it in Dublin. Except that when we got there, no one was actually wearing anything green. Well, I mean, some people had shirts with stripes or whatever, but that's not what I meant. It was all Mom could do to keep me in place so we could get our passports stamped. I needed to experience all of Ireland before I woke up from my dream, because that's the only way I could explain what was going on right now. If I wasn't careful, I'd jump awake in the middle of my history class or something. Okay, this way. Dad said our car is over here. Mom grabbed my arm. We get a car? Does that mean we can tour wherever? I stared out at the city lights, trying to soak it all in at once. Dad chuckled. Yes, that's what it means. Although we did schedule a few tours, I figured that way we could hit the more popular places. We made it to the center of Dublin a little after 10 p.m., which meant most of the businesses were already closed. We have a little ways to drive before we get to our cottage, so we'll stop here and let you wander while I get groceries. Just don't go too far. Dad stared at me until I agreed. Mom bit her lip. Want me to go with you? It's a new place. Mom, I'm 18. I'll be fine. I left them at the small store and shoved my hands in my pockets. It was cold this late at night, but I was determined to go back and see the river that ran through the city. Music played and tourists passed by in a hurry to get to their homes. I leaned over the edge of the bridge and stared down at the water. I wished I could be here when they dyed it green, but even now, it was beautiful. Careful there, you don't want to fall in. I jumped and turned to see who had spoken. The only thing more amazing than the guy's accent was his blue eyes. I couldn't speak for a moment. Hey. Hey, he chuckled. Your first time here? Yeah. Yours? Of course not. I wanted to face-palm myself. But I kept my hands in my pockets. I mean, hello. I live here. Well, I live in the country, but I'm visiting. He leaned against the bridge. You're here alone? Or with family? I stood up straight. Great, the first guy I meet is a creep. My family, which I should probably go find. It's nice to meet you. Louis, but you can call me Louis. He held a hand out. I shook it quickly and backed away. I'm Heidi. Nice to meet you. Gotta go. Maybe I should have stayed with my parents. I was only 18 and so not ready to get out there on my own. I practically ran back to the store and almost bumped into Dad. Whoa, you're back. I figured we'd have to peel you away from the bridge. He opened the door to our car. Yeah, well, it's cold. There are lots of people I don't know, and it's getting late. And an extremely hot guy was hitting on me, and I don't know if he's a creep or not. I kept that part to myself, but it didn't stop me from watching for him as we left the city. It was odd driving on the other side of the road, and I was glad Dad was the one doing it. The darkness was keeping me from seeing the landscape, but I was too tired to care. It had been a long flight, and the meal they'd provided was hours ago. So, where is this cottage again? I yawned. We're staying with Fiona. Well, kind of. She has a small cottage on her land that she's letting us borrow for the week. I'm just hoping it's got running water. I probably should have asked her. I blinked. Running water? I'd been hoping for electricity, and we might not even have running water? Mom glanced behind her. Hey, we're getting the full experience, right? Sure. It was another hour before Dad pulled onto a side road, narrowly missing the stone wall on each side. I leaned forward in my seat, excitement building as we got closer to the house. It was like all the movies I'd seen. We really were here. Fresh air greeted me as we climbed out of the car. I stretched and breathed in the smell of grass, the sea, and freshly turned dirt. The home was small but adorable, at least what I could see in the dark. I walked up the steps with Mom, careful of the uneven ground. An ancient woman opened the door and stared up at us through thick glasses. What do you want? Hi, are you Fiona? I am. The woman glared at me. And who are you? Mom cleared her throat. I'm Nancy. We spoke on the phone. This is my husband Darren and my daughter Heidi. The woman's glare turned to a smile. Why didn't you say so? Come in. I waited for my parents to go in first, then shut the door behind me. The house was covered in trinkets, books, and candles. Heaven. Pictures of Fiona's family sat on the small fireplace mantel. I could see the family resemblance in my mom and her siblings. I looked more like my dad, but there were subtle similarities here and there. It made me feel more like part of the family than I had before. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. Beautiful, isn't she? I followed his gaze to what had to be my parents' engagement photo. I thought she disowned everyone. That was after this picture was taken. In fact, this is part of why it happened. No Irish in my veins. Dad grimaced at the glare from Fiona. See? I don't get it, though. Mom always said there was no one near us from here. It hurt, really. This was part of my heritage. Fiona snorted and spouted a long line of Gaelic. By the way Mom blushed, it was probably good my lessons in the language hadn't gone anywhere. I stretched. Can we go to bed, please? I'm exhausted. I leaned against the wall as jet lag slammed into me. Oh, right. I'll come by tomorrow and you can show me your photos then. Mom hugged Fiona and picked up the linens for the beds. We went back out to our car and drove to the back of the property where a small cottage stood. It was dark and run down. I just prayed the inside was a little better than what I could see from the headlights. Inside, there were cobwebs on the furniture coverings and a musty smell in the air, but the lights worked, and so did the faucets. That was good enough for me. We pulled all the sheets off and piled them next to the door, and the house looked much more welcoming. Dad started a fire while Mom changed the linens, and I warmed some water for tea. Make sure you run the water for a bit before you use it. Mom smiled at my grumbling. Sorry, I should have reminded you before you already had it on the stove. I dumped out the water and turned on the faucet before going to change. That way it could be cleared out by the time I got back. My room was tiny, just big enough for a bed and dresser, but it was filled with more knickknacks for me to look through. Heidi? Mom called. Yeah? I left my room and went back to the kitchen. The water had steamed up the windows. Sorry, I was doing what you said and must have turned the faucet the wrong way. Mom laughed. I've done that too. I just wanted to make sure you hadn't fallen asleep. Nope. Although I want to. Maybe I'll just have tea in the morning. I yawned and leaned against the counter. Thank you. Mom kissed my forehead. You're welcome. I stumbled off to my bed, and even though it was lumpy and probably had fleas or bed bugs or a million other bugs, I didn't care. I was in Ireland. Know what's better than waking up in a small cottage in Ireland? Nothing. I was up before dawn, not my choice, darn jet lag, but it gave me a chance to go out and see the sunrise. The fields around me were lined with stone fences, and I wanted to capture every second I was there. Mom handed me a mug and took a sip from her own. Beautiful, isn't it? Can we just live here? I meant it too. I had zero desire to go home. My friends could just come here if they wanted to see me again. She laughed. I think Fiona would have something to say about us just moving in, but I get what you're saying. It's beautiful. I sighed. You're probably right, but we could ask anyway. We were thinking of going on a drive in an hour or so. Do you want to do that, or stick around here? She wrapped her blanket closer around her. That sounds awesome. I took a sip of the tea, enjoying the quiet of the morning. Mom left me, and I sat on the stone fence. Not the most comfortable place to sit, by the way, and searched for a castle in the distance. They had to have them, right? Careful, that fence is loose there. The guy's voice made me jump, and I fell backward, spilling tea all over me. He ran around the gate and helped me up. You scared the My eyes widened. You? It was the guy from the bridge the night before, and if he seemed good-looking then, it was nothing like seeing him in the early sunlight. He grinned sheepishly. I apologize. I was trying to avoid having you fall, but caused it instead. You think? I dabbed at the tea, but it was no use. I was soaked. The only consolation was that it had cooled off in the morning chill. What are you doing here? I left you in Dublin. I was there to welcome you to Ireland, but got stuck in traffic. Then you ran off before I could introduce myself at the bridge. I mean, I told you my name, but not why I was there. I shivered in the cold. You could have just told me you were there for us instead of freaking me out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go change. He nodded. Yes, go do that. It was nice to talk to you again. My anger lessened. It wasn't his fault I was so jumpy. It was nice to talk to you too. I ran back to the cottage and burst through the door. Mom, you'll never guess. What's up? Mom and Dad looked up from the paper they'd been reading. Mom smiled and shook her head. It's nothing. We were just going over some old papers we found here. Why are you all wet? This kid scared me and I fell off the fence. Gotta change. I went to my room and found something to change into. The cottage was old enough that there was no shower, but there was a clawfoot tub. That was even better. I ran the water until it was nice and hot, then climbed in. The cold from outside slowly faded, and by the time I climbed out, I was in a much better mood, and I was determined to make things right with Lewis. He was off in one of the fields when I finally found him, so I let him be. We could always talk later. Mom came out of the cottage holding an old basket filled with food. Are you ready? I figured we'd try to make it down to Blarney Castle today. Mom set the basket in the back of the car. I grinned. I'm so ready. But can we stop somewhere on the way, please? Sure. What were you thinking? Mom pulled out one of her maps and laid it out. Yes, Mom still used actual maps. The Rock of Cashel. It's the picture I have on my desktop of my computer. I've been dying to see it. I ran a finger down from Dublin to Cashel. See, and if you follow this road here, you can go straight past it on the way to Blarney. Mom pointed to a spot to the east. This is where we are, but we can make that work. It's your trip after all. I hugged her. Thank you. I'll go grab my charger and a sweater. You're sure you don't want to stay and talk to him? I can get your things. Mom wiggled her eyebrows. Mom. I rolled my eyes. Stop. But yes, can you go get them? Mom chuckled as she went into the house, leaving me with Lewis. I turned and waited for him to walk the rest of the way to the cottage. You do all the chores here? I leaned against our car. Aye, I've worked here since I was young, as did my father and his father before him. He hefted a bucket of feed. I raised my eyebrows. Your family has worked for my family that long? I suppose so. He nodded toward the car. Going somewhere. Yeah, we're doing some touring. Want to come? The words were out before I realized it. Brilliant, Heidi. Ask the stranger to go with us. But if Fiona thought he was safe, he must be. Maybe. He glanced over his shoulder at Fiona's house. I would have to ask for permission, but I could do that. Give you an Irishman's tour. That would be great. I only know what I've read from books. I hoped Mom and Dad wouldn't care, but the fact that I was actually talking to a boy was a miracle. That had to help. I'll go ask, could you dump that to the chickens? He handed me the bucket. I blinked. Sure. He grinned and jogged off in the direction of Fiona's house. So, where were the chickens? I wandered around to the side of the house and found a pen with several chickens. I had to wonder why they were over here and not by Fiona's. Maybe this little cottage was used more often than I'd originally thought. I dumped the feed and watched as they ran over and pecked at the grain. They were mesmerizing as they went after one morsel at a time. There you are. I thought you'd taken off somewhere. How'd it go with the boy? Mom put a hand on my shoulder and stepped closer to look over the fence. Good. I invited him to come with us. I turned to look at her. I hope you don't mind. Mom stared at me in surprise. I never invited boys anywhere. Seriously? I mean, sure, yeah. That way we won't get lost. I turned away from the chickens. That was my thought. Actually, I don't know what my thought was when I actually asked him. I was too flustered to use common sense. I'm proud of you, actually. Is he coming? I shrugged. He had to ask Fiona. Dad stood up after setting something in the trunk. Have to ask Fiona what? If the farm boy can come with us. Mom slipped an arm around Dad's waist. Ew, Mom, please. I gagged and climbed in the back seat. And he has a name, you know. It's Louis. Mom shut her door and turned to look at me. I know, but I like farm boy better. It's more romantic. I rolled my eyes. She was always quoting movies and Princess Bride was one of her favorites. Of course she would come up with that nickname. Louis stood outside Fiona's house holding a backpack and a loaf of bread. He climbed in as soon as Dad stopped. Fiona wanted me to give you this for the trip. Thank you. How soon do you need to be back? Both places we want to visit could take several hours. Dad pulled away and drove down the small road until he reached the main one. She said to go as long as I need to. She insisted it was so that I could show you around, but I think she was just trying to rid herself of me. He laughed. Mom joined in. I think Heidi feels that way often. I could feel the heat creeping up my cheeks. I don't think I'd ever told my parents anything like that. Okay, so maybe it was the case, considering how much time I spent in my house studying Ireland or learning Gaelic or talking to Jody. They tried to get me out and do things, but still, he didn't have to know that. Louis helped Dad find the right road while I sat back and enjoyed listening to his accent. He used a lot of different words from what we were used to, so he had to repeat himself a few times before we'd get it. I knew I should be talking, considering the fact that I'd been the one to invite him. But how was I supposed to say anything when his smile made me so tongue-tied? Chapter 3. The picture of the Rock of Cashel didn't do the actual castle justice. The car had come to a stop and my parents had gotten out, but I couldn't move. I was too busy trying to take everything in. Mom opened my door and held out a hand. Heidi, get a picture. You can stare at it later. Oh, right. I climbed out and lifted my phone. It wouldn't quite be the same, but at least I would have it. Louis leaned in, his face just inches from mine. Lovely photograph. Might I suggest another angle? I took another one just in case the first didn't turn out. Sure. Just up here a ways. He nodded up the path. Mom, where'd they go? I looked around to find them off to the side, buying another map. I sighed and jogged over to them. Hey, Luce is going to take me to get another picture from over there, if that's all right. Dad nodded and pointed at my phone. You make sure you call if you go anywhere else. Got it? Got it. I didn't even know my phone would have service outside of the country. Where are you guys going to be? Mom gestured to a small group of people. They're doing a tour right now. Come and join us when you get the picture, okay? Okay. I turned to Louis. Let's go, I guess. Louis laughed. Not used to the independence? Nope. There's no way they would have let me go off with a stranger even a few months ago. My eyes widened. Not that you met me yesterday. Except for the word of your ancient relative, I am a stranger. You have my word that I will make sure you return to your parents safely. I held a finger up, which is exactly what a dangerous person would say. I get it. He took my hand and pulled me toward the path. Let me prove it then. I glanced over at the tour group to find Mom and Dad watching me as we walked away. They smiled and waved, then went back to whatever the tour guide was saying. Both of my parents trusted me and Lewis, but they'd also assured me I could use my phone to call them. That gave me a little more confidence as we went down into a valley and then back up again. Lewis stopped and I almost ran into him. "Here." I gasped. "Whoa." "You just have to know right where to take the picture." He grinned. I angled the phone just right to make sure I got everything in. Perfect. I took a few and then looked over at Lewis. "Come over here." He stepped closer and I turned so we had the castle in the background. "What are we doing?" "Just smile." I took the selfie and showed it to him. "There. Now there's proof I actually made it to Ireland." "And proof that I was here too." I grinned. "Well, proof that you're real. My friends will die of jealousy." He raised his eyebrows. "You want them to die?" "No, it's a long story." I continued along the path. Let's just say I love everything Ireland, and what I thought was going to be a trip to my grandma's house ended up taking me halfway across the world. "You have been here before then?" He pointed out the steps to get up to the rock so we could get closer. I shook my head. "It's just always been a dream. Your country is beautiful, and the customs, the stories, everything. It's captivating." Lewis laughed. "That is what I've always felt about your country. America is pretty cool, but I've just always wanted to be here, to actually have the chance to experience a place with history that is as rich as yours." I had to stop talking by that time since my breaths came out in gasps. Sitting at home dreaming of Ireland wasn't exactly the best way to get exercise. We found a place to sit so I could rest. I pulled up the selfie and sent it to Jody, and then to my parents so they'd know where I was. I wasn't sure if Jody would get my text before I got back home, but I wanted her to see what was going on for my spring break. "So what about you? Do you live on Fiona's farm, or just go there each day to work?" I leaned back to feel the sun on my face. It was a little chillier than I'd planned here in the shadows of the castle. "We live about 1 kilometer away in an old church. It was originally part of our land, but our grandparents sold it to my family so that we could have our own property." My jaw dropped. "You live in a church?" "It was once, yes. Now it's my home." Lewis stood and held out a hand. "Ready to find your parents?" "I guess so." I was too busy trying to figure out how someone could actually live in a church and didn't realize the path ended where my foot stepped. Lewis grabbed my hand and pulled me back up, wrapping his other arm around me. "Watch your step there." My face burned. "Thanks for saving me. Maybe I should pay more attention." "Aye." He laughed. "Let's have you walk on this side of me." We changed places and continued down the path. It was a moment before I realized he still had my hand in his. Considering the fact that I'd almost fallen to my death, okay. So it would have been more rolling than plummeting. I decided that giving a little extra support on the pathway was a good idea, even if I was walking on the opposite side now. Lewis stopped a few moments later and pointed out at the valley. "Here's another great view for you." He'd apparently done this before. The view was breathtaking. I took my phone out and got more pictures, including a selfie, then slipped it back in my pocket. "So, do you do this for all the girls you take on tours?" I joked. "That's assuming I've taken other girls." He chuckled. "We don't get too many tourists in my part of the country." I raised my eyebrows. "Then how do you know the best places to get pictures?" He smiled. "You should stop by my house sometime and see." "I can come to your house?" I grinned. "Of course. I think I see your parents ahead." He nodded at a crowd taking photos of the front of the castle. I nodded. "That's them. I see my mom's awesome sense of fashion there in the back." He glanced down at my gold and green skirt. "Is that where you got yours?" "How'd you guess?" I grinned. Mine has a little more flair, though, especially this month. "This month." His confused expression suddenly cleared. "Ah, St. Patrick's Day. I forget you Americans like to celebrate as well." I nodded. Not as much as I do, but yeah, it's celebrated to an extent. Lewis glanced over at me. "Why do you like it so much?" "I just do, I guess." I stepped up behind Mom. "Did I miss much?" Mom jumped and turned. "There you are. I was wondering if we'd have to send out a search party. We're about to go inside, so you're here just in time." "Perfect." I pulled my hand away from Lewis when I caught Mom's raised eyebrows and handed her my phone. You need to check out the pictures we got. She scanned through them. These are fantastic! You'll have to show me where you took them. The tour was slow as everyone asked questions and stopped to look at different areas. I didn't mind because that meant I could soak in every inch of the place. I dreamed of coming here for years, and now I was standing inside. The history of it seemed to whisper to me, and I didn't want to leave. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand at one point and smiled. I hadn't realized I had tears on my cheeks until then. I shot a glance over at Lewis to see if he'd noticed, but he was looking at something on his phone. Which meant he probably had. I quickly wiped my cheeks and took several pictures while we stood in the center of the building, then continued on with the rest of the group. As soon as we were done, Lewis and I took my parents down to the same path we'd been on. It wasn't quite the same with the gathering clouds in the distance, but it was still beautiful. All right, do you want to look around the town for a bit, or should we continue on to Blarney Castle? Mom pulled on her jacket and took her umbrella out of her bag, just in case. If you want to go in, we will need to go now. Things close early around here. Lewis nodded toward the impending storm. I'm not sure we'll get to see much anyway. I shrugged. We can at least go down there since we're already halfway, right? If it's too rainy, we can just walk around the gardens. Mom nodded. We can do that. And then we can do a tour later if needed. Sweet. I jogged back to the car as the first drops landed. By the time Dad unlocked the door so I could climb inside, I was soaked. Mom walked up and climbed in, then closed her umbrella. See? Always be prepared. I rolled my eyes. You forget I knew nothing about this trip when we left. Yes, but I packed one. I'm sure we can find a replacement when we get to the next place. Mom handed me a sandwich and then handed Lewis one as well. Oh, and before I forget, I got you a keychain. I took the small keychain from Mom. It was a replica of the castle with the word Ireland underneath it. It's perfect. Thank you. Of course. We'll get one at each place if you'd like. Or we can get something else. Mom beamed and went back to her own sandwich. I blinked. This trip was going to cost a fortune if she bought something everywhere we went. Although, not having to pay for a hotel probably helped with that. I grabbed my backpack from the back of the car and attached the keychain to the zipper next to the mini leprechaun and horseshoe that were already there. Lewis chuckled. You really do like St. Patrick's Day. I told you. I dropped the bag into the back and picked up my sandwich. So, are you still in school? Aye, but I take my exams soon. I hope to begin college in the fall. He took a card out of his wallet. My school. I pulled out my student ID and cringed. My senior photos had not been kind to me. Here's mine. Just don't laugh. Lewis glanced at the card and then at me. I think you look beautiful. Tired, but beautiful. Thanks. I snatched it back and put it in my wallet. Truth was, I'd slept through my alarm that day and had arrived at school just in time to get the pictures done. Like I said, they hadn't been kind. Lewis pointed out several sights as we drove, and the hour passed by quickly. There were several words he said that I had to look up, but I was slowly getting used to his accent. Mom asked questions about Fiona's family and wrote down answers in a notebook. She had to be eating this up. She liked family history stuff almost as much as I loved Ireland. Almost. The rain finally let up as we were pulling up to the castle. We had to avoid puddles as we climbed out of the car. We took several pictures, then headed to the steps that would take us up to the Blarney Stone. Dad refused to kiss the stone, but Mom was all for it. She shoved all of her things into his arms and bent over backward to kiss it. My plan had been to do the same, but we were 90 feet up, and my fear of heights meant I hated standing on a step stool. You're not going to do it? Lewis asked. I thought that's why you came here. It was until I looked down there. I pointed to the grate that separated me and the ground. Lewis shrugged. Fair enough. I think you'll kick yourself if you don't. I hesitated. He had a point. Who knew when I'd end up here again? Fine. No one told me I couldn't close my eyes, so that's what I did. I was on solid ground. Everything was okay. My mom and dad were right there. My lips touched the cold stone, and that was enough for me. I pulled myself up and stepped away from the ledge. Mom stared at me in shock. You did it. Yeah, I did. Now can we go? I think I'm going to be sick. I rushed past them and ran down the steps, as far from the scary heights as I could get. Once I got to the bottom, I leaned up against the wall and sucked in air. Was it at least worth it? Lewis's voice interrupted my thoughts. I cracked one eye open. No. He laughed. Sure it was. Now come on. If you want to see the gardens, we need to move, or we'll miss it. The park will be closing soon. We followed Mom and Dad along the paths, stopping now and then to get pictures. A little drizzle fell as we finished and headed toward the car. Mom stopped at the gift shop like she said she would, and we picked out another keychain. Dad stopped at a small village close to the castle. We'd better eat here before we head back. It's going to be a while. That's the one you want, right there. Lewis pointed to a small restaurant. They serve the best Irish stew in the area. Dad checked his phone, then nodded. We can go there instead if you'd like. Mom took his arm as they crossed the road. I watched for cars, then jogged across. Lewis stepped onto the curb and opened the door for us. The diner was adorable. It had paintings of Irish countryside on the walls, and the decor was simple. We were shown to a table, and Lewis ordered for us. I had no idea what Irish stew was supposed to taste like, but this was amazing. Lewis took a bite of his and closed his eyes. Almost like Mum's. Hers is better. I wanted to go to his house even more now. Aye, the best. He took one of the biscuits and broke a part off to dip into the stew. Most stews I've had are rubbish compared to this. All I knew was that the soup from a can was never going to taste the same after having this. My stomach was both happy and full by the time I scraped the last of the soup out of the bowl. I stared longingly at Mom's bowl, but knew I wouldn't be able to eat it. Mom flagged down a waiter and got a box for it. Here you go, you can have it later tonight. Thank you, thank you. I slid the box closer to me, savoring the smell coming from it. As the sun began to set on our way home, I stared out at the green fields around me. I couldn't believe the first day in Ireland was already over. That meant I only had a few left. And while I was happy with everywhere we'd visited, I mourned the fact that a week from then I would be back home, staring out the window of the school. Chapter 4. I'd hoped that we could see Lewis's house that evening when we got back, but it was already so late that he had to get chores done and I was ready to drop. Jet lag still had my days and nights messed up, and I wanted to sleep for the next 12 hours. No more than that, though, or I'd miss the tours. Mom had family history questions she wanted to ask Fiona, so after they dropped me off at the small cottage, they went back to Fiona's. I dropped onto my bed and pulled up my email. There were a few from teachers reminding us that we still had homework for when we got back and had upcoming tests. Way to ruin it, teachers. Social media hadn't missed me too much since I'd left, but I still scrolled through to see what my friends were up to while I was gone. My thumb hovered over the button to add a post. Should I mention where I was? Maybe. But I also kinda wanted to surprise them when I got back. Of course they were probably wondering where I disappeared to. I added the pictures and hit submit, then ran a search for Lewis so I could friend him. I'd caught his last name on his school ID, so he wasn't too hard to find. His pictures were mostly from school or out on the farm. There were a few shots from different locations I recognized, and they were beautiful. He really did know right where to get the perfect shot. A text popped onto my phone, followed by several others. Friends asking where I was, inviting me to the movies, and why I hadn't gone to the dance the night before. Apparently the texting from our carrier had finally caught up. Hopefully it didn't cost my parents a fortune. I opened the text from Jody and responded, "Check social media." There was a pause before she answered, "What the heck? You're in Ireland?" Mom and Dad surprised me. I can't even believe it. I sent a picture from earlier that day. Who's the guy? Did you meet someone? Guy? I hadn't meant to upload any of the photos of Lewis. I flipped through all the photos, but there was nothing. I checked my notifications and was surprised to see Lewis had mentioned me in a comment. He'd shared some of the photos he'd taken at the same time I had, but there was one I didn't know about. One of me crying in the middle of the castle. Oddly enough, it didn't look bad. The caption was sweet. "This is what you call a love of Ireland. My American friend, Heidi, XOXO. He'd also included the selfie I'd sent to him on the way home from the Blarney Castle and tagged me in the photo. That would be how Jody found the picture of him. I'll tell you about him later, but man, he's so much cuter in person. And that was saying something. He was way more photogenic than me. Well, except for the photo he'd taken. I'd have to figure out what he did to the picture. Trust you to find an Irishman while you're there. I want to hear all when you get back. Deal. Better go. Don't want to rack up the phone bill. XX. I climbed out of bed and went to find something to eat along with the soup Mom had given me. There was bread sitting on the cupboard, so I cut some cheese and made some grilled cheese sandwiches. While I stood at the counter, movement caught my eye outside. A car came toward the cottage. Mom and Dad must have finished talking. I started water on the stove and cut more bread in case they were hungry, then took my bowl of stew to the table to eat. It was just as good warmed up as it had been earlier. I was going to have to find a recipe for this so I could make it at home. Or I could just live here instead. Mom and Dad came inside holding a box and laughing about something. Mom looked over at me in surprise. I was sure you'd be asleep by now. She set the box in a corner and started on sandwiches. I thought about it, but then I got distracted. I nodded toward the box. What's in there? Mom handed Dad his food. Photo albums. Fiona wanted to go to bed, so she offered to let me take them. We were good at that, staying way longer than we should when we visited. I finished my stew and bent down next to the box. Several books sat inside. Some were new, while others looked like they'd fall apart at the slightest touch. I picked up one of the newer ones first and sorted through. Fiona was quite a bit younger in them, but I could tell it was her by her smile and her eccentric clothing. Apparently it really did run in the family. I recognized different places where she'd visited in America, but the rest were here in Ireland. Hey, Mom? Yeah? Mom sat next to me on the floor. I tapped the book. Why didn't you ever tell me we had such close ties to Ireland? I told you. It was because she disowned us. Just because she decided we weren't family doesn't mean that you had to pretend she wasn't part of ours. Especially when she seemed to have a lot in common with me. Mom sighed. I don't know. I guess it just slipped my mind. I'm not perfect, you know. I glared at her. Still, Ireland? Were you afraid I'd run away from home to go find her or something? No, although now that you've said it, I am. She brushed my hair off my shoulder. I'm sorry, sweetheart. When Fiona dropped all ties, she moved all over. At some point, she settled back home and I never knew about it. Not until I talked to your grandma. That still doesn't make sense, but whatever. At least we're here now, right? I turned more pages and stopped. A guy in the picture who looked remarkably like Louis. A dad? Grandpa? He had the same smile, but he seemed more tired. Probably because he was working for Fiona, and he had to be at least 10 years older than Louis in this picture. You like him, don't you? Mom asked. Who, this guy? I don't even know him. I turned the page. Mom laughed. No, Louis. I don't know. I guess as much as I can in the day I've known him. Probably too much. I was leaving in 6 days and couldn't afford to leave even more of my heart here in Ireland. You seem to enjoy being with him today. Mom took another book out and glanced through. She gasped. I leaned over her shoulder. Wait, is that you? Mom nodded, and Dad came over to look as well. I don't know how she has this. Well, she's holding you, so I guess that's how. I put the book away I'd been holding and looked at Mom's instead. There were several more pictures of Mom and her 3 sisters. When she made it through the book, she set it aside on a different pile and picked out another one. I stood and went to my bed, knowing that Mom needed her privacy while she looked through them. Like I said before, Mom really liked her history. And finding out that there was more to the story meant she needed some time on her own. She'd tell me when she was ready. I readjusted my backpack on my shoulder and sighed. The bus we were supposed to go on was supposed to be there any minute, and I was eager to go on the next tour. I'd helped with the last of the chores that morning, so Louis was able to come with us. Why he wanted to go on a tour of places in his own country was beyond me. Mom told me that probably wasn't the reason he wanted to come, but I pushed the hint away. Even if I hoped she was right. Louis pointed. There it is. A brown bus pulled up and the tourists piled on, finding seats with their tripmates. Mom and Dad sat near the front, and I found one near the middle that wasn't already taken. Louis slid in next to me and set his bag on the floor. You're sure you don't mind me coming with you? He asked. Again. Yes, I'm sure. It's nice to have someone my own age instead of being stuck with my parents the whole time. Not that they weren't cool. I liked my parents, but well, Louis. He nodded. I can understand that. My parents are embarrassing in public. I grinned and smoothed out my shamrock print skirt. I guess some things are global. See there? That's where I want to go to college once I graduate. He pointed up at Trinity College. I'm hoping to score high enough to make it in, but it's tough. I just really want to see their library. I had pictures of the library on my computer as well. I never thought of going to the college, but now that I was here, the temptation was strong. It's hard to get into. Lewis shrugged. I assume it's much like other colleges. I wondered if there was even a chance for me. My grades were good, and my test scores were pretty high, but who knew if they were high enough? What would you study? Art, architecture, something along those lines. I would love to work on some of the old castles and take them back to their former glory. Lewis pulled a notebook out of his bag and flipped through pages until he found what he wanted. I have a few ideas already. I took the notebook and went through them. These are incredible. You drew these? This is just one notebook. He took it from me. Dad wants me to continue to work for your family's farm, but I want more than that. You could be the next Frank Lloyd Wright. I'd watched a documentary on him not long ago, and his style had become a favorite of mine. Out-of-the-box thinking was right up my alley. He shook his head. Not him, although I do like his work. I want to follow more of an ancient feel. Columns and fountains with chandeliers. He smiled. I think that might have something to do with the home I have now, though. I grinned. Probably. I'd love to see your house sometime. I mean, if that's all right with you. I would love that. Maybe when we get back from this trip if your parents don't have another day of tours planned, that is. This was more than just a one-day tour, and I was surprised Lewis's parents let him come, since we wouldn't be back until tomorrow night. As far as I know, I think we're going to Dublin to tour there. A few of the museums close early enough that we can't get to them and go on a tour. I stared out at the landscape passing by. The green of the fields blew me away. Lewis leaned over my shoulder and pointed up at a building. See that there? Yeah? That's what my house looks like. I was too busy paying attention to his cheek touching mine and the smell of his soap and cologne to pay attention to the old building in the distance. I swallowed, trying to get myself to speak. Is it that old and ancient looking? I kept as still as possible, afraid that he would pull away as soon as I moved. Aye, but our yard looks much nicer, and we've done many improvements inside over the years. He pulled away and leaned against the seat. So much cooler than my house. I sighed. All my life, I've lived in this suburban home with a perfectly trimmed yard, perfect neighbors, and a typical teenage life. This right here, this is my dream. I love the wilds of Ireland. And Scotland. And, well, England. Lewis chuckled. It always amazes me how so many Americans would love to come and live here and be a part of this life, when many of us dream of visiting or living in the United States. Perhaps we should just switch places for a while. Maybe then we could understand what the other sees. That's what I tell my parents every day. I sat up straight so I could find my parents. They were chattering away with one of the other couples on the bus. I'd begged to be an exchange student for a while, but Mom always told me I'm her one and only, so she wanted me at home for as long as she could have me. She has a point. Lewis closed his eyes and leaned his head against the seat. Besides, if you'd have done that instead of coming on this trip, you would have never met me. I shrugged. Maybe. Mom and Fiona seemed to be getting along pretty well. I'm sure we would have come sometime. He frowned and opened one eye. They didn't get along. I thought you knew. Mom said Fiona shut herself off from the family for years. They just got in contact a few months ago. No, I didn't know that. I suppose it makes sense, though. She showed up one day, cleared out all the cloths on the furniture, and made it her home. We never questioned her since she was our boss, but I always wondered why she suddenly moved back. So, the pictures that were up on the fireplace must have been put out fairly recently then. That made a little more sense. Maybe, just maybe, I'd uncover all the secrets of what happened in our family by the time I left for home. The cliffs of Moher were so much cooler in real life than I'd ever expected. I'd stared at them in pictures, drooled over them in movies, but standing here with the wind blowing my hair back made me feel free. If I could have built my house right in this spot so I could see this view every day, I would never leave. People would just have to bring me food and supplies. Beautiful, yes? Lewis's touch on my shoulder made me jump. That doesn't even begin to describe it. How do you not drive here every day to look out at the ocean? I folded my arms to keep me warm. The cool March wind might have been great for making things look all movie-like as my hair flowed back behind me, but it was freezing. He took his jacket off and placed it over my shoulders. I'm too busy with work and school to do that. Besides, I live closer to Dublin. If I want the ocean, I go to that coast. Lewis took my hand and pulled me over to another part of the cliffs. See that outcropping there? I nodded. When I was young, I dreamed of jumping off there. No thank you, I'll just stay here. I backed up a few feet, fear clenching my stomach as I suddenly realized just how high up we actually were. Okay, so maybe not a house here, but nearby just so I could see it when I felt like it. So you still visit sometimes then? He shoved his hands in his pockets, clearly trying to pretend like he wasn't freezing. On holiday? Tell me, do you tour all of the United States? No, there are a lot of places I haven't been. Why? We don't go see all the sights in Ireland any more than you do there. I've seen some of them, of course, but not all. I raised an eyebrow. That's not even close, though. Your country is the size of Indiana. That means you have much more of a possibility of seeing all of Ireland than I do of seeing all of my country. I suppose that's true, but it doesn't mean it happens, especially for a poor farm boy like myself. Lewis shivered. Shall we head back to the bus? Mom would have died if she'd heard Lewis call himself a farm boy. I followed him back to the bus, surprised at how fast I could run from the cliffs. Apparently I was more terrified of them than I'd thought. Others drifted back to the bus as well, and soon we were all ready to go to our next stop. Lewis may not have been to all the different touristy places in Ireland, but he knew enough that he could show me the best places to get pictures. My photo album was going to be unbelievable when I got home. Mom and Dad left us alone most of the time. They usually stopped long enough to make sure we had food or to ask what souvenir I wanted, but otherwise, they went off on their own. It had been a while since they'd been able to get away from everything, so this was as much their own vacation as it was mine, and I was totally fine with that. Our last stop of the day was at Dungarira Castle, and I didn't want to leave. We got there before the banquets they held at night, so that was lame, but the rest was so cool. We got to tour the tower and around the yard. We just managed to get the last perfect picture of the sunset when Lewis gasped. The bus! I think they're leaving! I looked down and yelped. You're right, let's go! We ran down the flights of stairs, apologizing to tourists as we went by, and barely made it to the bus as they started it up. Mom stood next to the door, her arms folded and an eyebrow raised. Cutting it a little close, wouldn't you say? Sorry, but check it out! I showed her the photo. This is amazing! She took the phone from me and climbed the steps into the bus. Where was this taken? I pointed to the top of the tower. We had to go up there and lean clear over to get it just right. Mom handed me back my phone. Let's not wait till the last second next time, okay? Fine. So we're on our way to Galway? She nodded. They have a cute little bed and breakfast booked for us. We'll eat dinner and then head there. Sounds good. Why they didn't just have us eat at the castle was beyond me, but I figured the tour people knew what they were doing. I went back to where Lewis sat and took the side by the window. You sure you don't want to sit here? Nope. You need to see this. He smiled and sat back in his seat. It wasn't until we left the village that I realized what he was talking about. The moon reflected off the ocean as we drove by. I did my best to get a good picture, but the window kept glaring off the lens, even when I turned off the flash. This would be just for me to enjoy then. I almost expected kelpies or other creatures to appear out of the water as we went, but the ocean remained calm. Now you understand. Lewis leaned closer. It's beautiful in the daytime, but I like it better at night. So much better, I sighed. I'll never get tired of this view, or any of the others I've seen today. Lewis chuckled. Including me? I grinned. Including you. But seriously though, that was really cheesy. I know, but I had to say it. He straightened. Oh, I think we're here. Galway was an adorable city on the shore, with jewelry shops and other souvenir stores dotting each street. Mom was going to love it here. The bus dropped us off at a bed and breakfast where we were given keys to our rooms. Lewis and my dad would stay in one room, and my mom and I shared the other one thanks to the twin beds we were given. The others in our group scattered to go find dinner while I waited for Mom to change. We met Lewis and Dad in the hallway on our way out. We found a place that was still open and were seated almost immediately. I ordered shepherd's pie, and my parents ordered a coddle and potatoes pancakes so we could try all three. I just hoped we wouldn't regret it since Lewis ordered something completely different. But then he was used to all these different foods. We only have a few hours in the morning to tour before we leave for the next destination. Do you have any ideas? Mom asked. Lewis shook his head. I haven't really visited here much. We could ask the waiter, though. I'm sure he knows of a few places. That's a good idea. Mom stood and went to find a map. Our food came and I breathed in the aroma. We split each of the meals in 3 so we could share. I figured Lewis didn't need to split with the rest of us. Out of the 3 I tried, the shepherd's pie was my favorite. The others were really good, but this one had the best flavor. When the waiter came with the check, my mom held up her map. We're only here for a couple of hours tomorrow. Could you show us the best places to visit while we're here? The waiter took my dad's card and the map. I'll take care of this and get right back to you. Apparently, he'd done this before. I leaned back and stretched. I don't think I need to eat for a few days. Yeah, you'll make it till morning. Mom smiled. Are you going to eat the last of that? I handed her my plate. How are you not full? My pancakes weren't as filling. She took a bite of my food. I'm ordering this next time. The waiter came back a few minutes later and handed the card and receipt to my dad, then opened the map. I've marked the best places within this area, but you're going to want to go ahead to this jewelry store. It has a museum of claddagh rings from all different eras. That got my mom's attention, and mine, and Lewis's. I'm pretty sure it was for all different reasons. Mom thanked the waiter and held tightly to the map as we left. She'd been on the computer for the rest of the night trying to find out more information on the store. Lewis and I walked a few feet behind my parents and enjoyed the night air. He shoved his hands in his pockets and kicked at a stone. I'm surprised Mom hasn't brought us here before. She's about as much of a history buff as your mom. You'll have to bring her back later, I guess. I shivered. It gets really cold down by the water, doesn't it? Aye. Lewis opened the door to our bed and breakfast and waited for me to walk inside. But nothing beats the ocean air. He was right about that, for sure. My landlocked home was going to be really sad after this view. Dad waited outside their room and let Lewis in, and I went into mine where Mom sat on her bed doing something on her computer. I knew it. Find anything out about it? I pulled my shoes off and sat on the bed. Nope, I'm still logging into the internet. It's a little spotty, Mom grumbled. She liked her fast Wi-Fi we had at home. I pulled up the store on my phone. Here you go. Mom took it from me and scanned through. It opens at 8. We'll eat, check out, and then head straight there because it's a little bit of a walk. You're going to skip all the other shops to go there? I asked, surprised. Claddagh rings from several decades. How much cooler is that? She picked up her own phone and scanned through several photos. Fiona showed me hers the other day. It's beautiful. It was golden worn, but Mom was right. It was so pretty. Wow, okay, so yeah, let's go. Those other stores will be there when we get back. That's what I figured. Mom nodded toward my bag. Don't you have some homework to work on? Over spring break? No. But I do have some reading I can do. I changed into my pajamas and then brushed my teeth. The bed wasn't comfortable, but it would do. I rolled over and picked up my book to read. Mom wasn't going to bed anytime soon, so I might as well get ahead on my book for school. The early morning breeze was warmer than last night, but still had a chill to it. It was hard to keep up with Mom and Dad as we crossed streets and walked up the sidewalk to the store. Other stores were still opening while customers waited to go in. Lewis and I weaved through the crowd and followed my parents into the store. My jaw dropped. Okay, this was amazing. The museum displayed rings from the last few centuries. There were rings for sale from different decades, but most were definitely out of our price range. I looked through the rings I could actually afford, but nothing caught my eye. The necklaces were more appealing, so I moved over to those. I found one with a green stone that I knew I wanted. Hey Mom, can I get this? I pointed to it and waited for her to come over. Oh, that's pretty. And the price is okay. Yes, get that one. It would go with your dresses. I went to find a store clerk and ran into Lewis. Oh, hey, did you find something you liked? He shrugged. There are a few I like, but I wouldn't know what size to get. Which one do you like? This one over here. I'm thinking of getting one for my mum. She lost hers years ago. He picked one up. What do you think? I tried it on. I need another size bigger, probably. What about your mom? Would she have skinnier fingers than me? He frowned. No, I think hers about the same. I'll go ask if I can get a bigger size. I spotted a salesman near the necklaces. I'll be right back. I need to talk to that guy. All right. I hurried over. Excuse me, I'd like this necklace. The man smiled. Excellent choice. Would you like a ring to go with it? No, thank you. I tend to wear necklaces more often than rings. I waved Mom over. She set another necklace next to mine. We'll buy both of these, and I think your dad has one more thing he was going to get. Okay, I'm going to go back to the older rings. I wandered off and tried to find Louis, but he was busy. The styles from the 1800s were probably my favorite, especially the gold ones. Too bad it would take days to see all of them. Ready, Heidi? We need to get back if we want to stop anywhere else. The bus will be leaving in an hour. Mom held up the bag. Where's Louis? Here. Louis walked up behind me. I was looking for you. We walked back and stopped at a couple more places before grabbing our things to put on the bus. This time, instead of a dress and leggings, I decided to go with pants and a t-shirt. We were going to be hiking and walking around caves, and I preferred to have protection on my legs. This time, I let Louis take the window seat since he let me have it last night. There were lakes and ruins on the way, and I kept leaning over him to see out the window to get pictures. On our third stop, Louis insisted that we trade spots. As much as I love having you close, you almost gave me a concussion a few times there. Louis chuckled. Besides, I can come back here later. You should get photos while you can. If you insist. I sat down and stared out at the lake. I wish we didn't have to move on so quickly. I really could have sat there for hours. Or days. Louis grinned. I think that's why they move on so quickly. Probably. I sighed. Where are we going next? I'm not sure. To another castle, I think. I pulled my phone out of my pocket to see you texted me. Wow, Jody's up late. Who's Jody? My best friend. I've told you about her, haven't I? I typed back a response. He shook his head. I don't think so. Oh, we've been friends since kindergarten, and she puts up with all my craziness. I showed him a picture of the two of us. He took the phone from me and went back to the text. He typed in a message to her and hit send. There. Now you can say we've met. It's nice to meet you, Louis. Take care of my friend. You've nothing to worry about. She's in good hands. I tried to take my phone back so I could talk to her, but Louis held it out where I couldn't reach it. Hey, I need it. But she's talking to me. Louis answered another text. See? Oh, now she's calling. I took the phone and answered it. Hey, Jody, what's up? Is that really Louis? Yeah, he took my phone. Hey! I tried to get my phone back, but Louis held it out again. I sighed and waited for him to finish. Hello, Jody. Top of the morning to ya. Louis winked at me. Jody squealed on the other line. I'd have to tell her later that Louis usually didn't talk like that. She's glaring at me right now. Louis took my hand in his and ran his thumb across my fingers. Like that was going to cheer me up. Give it back. He held up a finger. Yes, I'll tell her. Yes, I'll make sure she buys you something. It was lovely meeting you. Thank you. I took the phone back. Sorry about that. I'll have to remember to hide my phone from now on. He's cute. You should totally keep him. Jody laughed. Anyway, I'd better get to bed before Mom decides to come and see why I'm laughing. Talk to you later. Make sure you get pictures. Got it. I hung up. You took up all my time with her. Louis shrugged. You'll see her in a few days. I grumbled and shoved my phone into my pocket. Fine, but first let's go see these ruins. All right. Louis stood and pulled me up with him. I do hope you'll forgive me. Maybe, in a few days. I walked away from him and left the bus. The ruins in front of us were covered in grass and other plants. It was peaceful here. The guide was off in the distance with our group, but I wanted to stay where I was and enjoy the quiet. Louis stood next to me. Are you mad at me? No. I turned to him. If you hadn't taken my phone, Jody would have insisted on talking anyway. Good, because I would hate to have you angry with me. Louis breathed in deeply. It's beautiful here. I nodded. We'd probably better catch up to the rest of the group. He placed a hand on the small of my back. After you. The tour guide told us all about the area and let us wander for a while before it was time to get back onto the bus. After a quick stop for lunch, it was time to leave for Dublin. I sat by the window and Louis slid in next to me. 2 days of climbing around the ruins had me exhausted, but it was a good exhaustion. I rested my head against the window and closed my eyes. A click followed by a flash of light jerked me out of my nap that I hadn't realized I was taking. Lewis smiled at his phone and turned it toward me. My mouth was open and my face was smushed against the window. Not cool. Delete that. I reached for his phone, but he moved it away. Seriously, that's awful. His finger hovered over the delete button, then moved it. I disagree. Anyone would look like that if they slept against a window. I rolled my eyes. Yes, but no one would actually want a picture of themselves sleeping against the window either. Then don't sleep there. He grinned. His smile fell. You really want me to delete it? Yes. I shot him my best pouty face. He laughed and snapped a picture. This is much better. I'll delete the other one. I leaned over to make sure he actually did it. Thank you. You're welcome. Now, if you'd like something a tad more comfortable, you can rest your head on my shoulder. Part of me wanted to snuggle right up with him, but the more hesitant side, well, hesitated. Okay, are you sure? In theory, it could be romantic, but considering the picture I'd just seen of me practically drooling down the window, I didn't think it was a good idea. He lifted his arm up and over my shoulders and pulled me in. Is that better? Yes. It was all I could get out. The rest of the words sat there jumbled against the giddiness of being so close. I took deep breaths to relax. Lewis laid his head on mine, which finally put me at ease. Sleep still didn't come, but it was nice sitting there watching the Irish countryside fly by. What I could see of it, at least. The sky turned dark as we continued on our journey, and by the time we reached Dublin, the sun had completely set. Sitting in that same position for a while had put a kink in my neck, but I wasn't about to move. When the bus stopped at the station, I stood and slowly rotated my head to get the knots out while we waited to climb off the bus. Mom and Dad stood by the side with their bags, looking at a map as usual. Mom looked up when we got to her side. There you are. We wanted to look around to see if there are any museums open. Lewis checked his watch. Nothing much is open except pubs and souvenir shops. I raised an eyebrow. You want to go visit bars? No. Well, maybe one. Mom rifled through her purse. Lewis, can you make sure she stays out of trouble? Excuse me? I put my hands on my hips. You trust the stranger over your own daughter. Mom kissed me on the cheek and handed me a few bills. When he's the one who knows the most about Dublin, yes. We'll meet you two right here in an hour. Got it? Dad took her by the arm and they walked away. Tourists laughed as they walked out of souvenir shops with their various purchases. I shook my head and turned to Lewis. My parents are way too trusting. I shivered. They know you're an adult and they know you will not do anything you shouldn't. Lewis nodded toward the river. Shall we? I glanced in the direction my parents went, then nodded. We just have to get back in time. We will. Lewis took my hand and led me through the crowd so we could cross the bridge. Why didn't you come for St. Patrick's Day? I would think that if you love Ireland so much, you'd want to be part of the big parade. I didn't have a say for the dates. My parents surprised me. I moved around a couple of tourists taking pictures. Lewis slowed as we reached the bridge. There was a chill to the air, but it was still nice out, and it was peaceful staring down at the water. You should really see it when it's green someday. Lewis leaned his arms on the ledge next to mine. I know. Too bad I leave in a couple of days. I sighed. You'll have to send me pictures. Lewis turned toward me. You want to stay in contact? I nodded. Yes. I mean, that is if you want to. Great. Had I read the signals wrong? Maybe he really was just wanting to be a good tour guide. I stepped away from him. He stepped closer. Of course. My eyes widened. We were just inches from each other, on a bridge in Dublin. Lewis reached forward and brushed a hair from my forehead. That's great. I couldn't breathe. You know we're on the same bridge where we first met, right? His eyes danced. I nodded again, trying to come up with words. Any words. He was right there. I could see his eyelashes and the brown flecks in his eyes in the light of the lamps on the street. He leaned forward, his lips brushing mine. He pulled back, a question in his eyes. I pulled him closer and kissed him back, wrapping my arms around his neck. A little drizzle poured down on us as we broke apart. I really, really hoped that no one would wake me up from this dream right now. Unfortunately, my alarm went right off then, telling me it was time to get back to our car. I stepped away from Lewis so I could silence the alarm. Lewis took my hand as we walked and pointed out a couple of places he wanted to show me before we left. Mom and Dad met us at the car a few minutes later. Mom looked between us and smiled without saying anything. How she always knew what happened was beyond me. Would you like me to drive? Lewis held out his hand. Dad hesitated, then handed over the keys and took the back seat. Just be careful. Of course. Lewis drove a little slower than I would have liked, but otherwise he was a good driver. It was almost midnight by the time we got back to the cottage. Mom and Dad went inside, leaving the two of us together. I went up on my toes and kissed his cheek. Thank you for driving us. See you tomorrow? I have some work to do, but I should be able to come when I'm finished. If not, maybe you can come to our house for dinner. I brightened. That would be awesome. I mean, I would love for you to come sooner, but I don't want you to get in trouble for not getting your work done. Lewis handed me our keys and pulled his out of his pocket. Till tomorrow night, then. Mom and Dad waited at the kitchen table when I walked inside. The tea kettle whistled to let us know it was ready. So, someone had a good night tonight? Mom poured honey into her mug. Me? Apparently you two had enough to drink that Lewis felt he had to drive. I raised my eyebrows. What were you going to do if he didn't? Dad poured the hot water. I would have given them to him anyway. We didn't have much, just a drink or two. Sounded about right. That's usually what they had at parties. Maybe don't the next time we have to drive home? Mom stirred her coffee. Don't think you're getting out of this. Did something happen tonight? Maybe. But my burning face and grin betrayed me. Speaking of which, Lewis invited us over for dinner tomorrow night. He has to work for the rest of the day, so he can't come sightseeing with us. Ugh, now you have to hang out with your parents. How embarrassing. Mom laughed. We promised not to make it too horrible. I grabbed a mug from the cupboard and found some hot chocolate mix. Can we spend the day in Dublin? I want to see some of the colleges and museums. Mom pulled a handful of pamphlets out of her bag. Already have us covered. And you have a tour of Trinity College set for 2 o'clock. What? I snatched the Trinity College paper off the pile. Well, I figured we'd keep your options open since you didn't seem too excited about any colleges back home. Mom sorted through a few papers and pulled one out. We just have to fill out this form and a few others since you're not a citizen. My eyes widened. You'd let me come here? She shrugged. Fiona needs some help, and it's better to get it from family. You could live here and travel to school. I thought you told me she was really ill, and that's why we were visiting. I leaned forward. Just exactly how ill is she? Enough that I wanted to see if we could make amends. Not enough that she's in an immediate danger, but her doctors don't think she'll make it another year. I stared at her. So, basically, I would only have my job of helping her for a few months? What would I do after that? Travel, go to school, learn everything there is to learn about the country you love. Plus, someone needs to take over her property someday, and you're the youngest in our line. If we don't take it, the land will sell. Mom sighed. You don't have to decide tonight, or even next week. This is just an option for you if you want it. I could live here. I mean, even if Mom hadn't offered it, I could have. People studied abroad all the time, and no one in my school would be too shocked if that's what I chose. But to have it fall into my lap like this? Of course I still had to get in. I'll think about it. I took a sip of the hot chocolate. Someone really needs to teach you to tell the truth, though, especially when it comes to your family. Mom blushed. I know, I'm sorry. It's just been a lot to wrap my head around. To wrap your head around. I'm the one who just found out I have family here in Ireland. I shook my head. That one still stings. Dad leaned down and kissed my head. Give her a break, sweetie. This is hard for her too. I sighed and drank the rest of my hot chocolate. Sorry, Mom, you're right, and I'll think about it. Thank you. Mom scooped the pamphlets up and put them back in her bag. I stood and put my mug in the sink, then went to my room. Shame mixed with annoyance while I got ready for bed. Mom had not had an easy family life, and me complaining about this wasn't helping. Besides, she just offered me the chance to move to Ireland. That should have given her best mom ever status right there. The house grew quiet while I tried to sleep. 2 more days here. 2. And then I would go home and have to decide if I was going to come back in the fall. Every ounce of me screamed that I knew exactly what I wanted, but it would mean leaving my parents and my friends. I flipped through the photos on my phone, hoping they would help me make a decision. But what they really told me was that I needed to make this decision when my Irish-loving self wasn't actually in Ireland. Chapter 5. Halfway through the day of going through museums, I concluded that walking through the exhibits would have been a lot more fun with Lewis than with my parents. They loved to stop and talk about the meaning of each painting, and while I knew that Lewis loved his art, I still think the conversation would have gone a lot differently. Not to mention the fact that my parents would sneak a kiss or a hug whenever they thought I wasn't watching. So embarrassing. Not that they weren't this way at home. They just seemed to be extra excited to be with each other. While they giggled in the next room, I stared up at the tapestry that was older than my country. The color had faded, but the picture was still clear. There was so much history here, and I felt like I'd only scratched the surface. Ready, sweetie? Mom's voice made me jump. What? Oh, yeah, let's go. I glanced back at the tapestry again and followed them out to the car. It was almost time for my tour of the college, and the nerves were starting to kick in. Mom wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You don't have to make any decisions right now. It's just to look at options. I don't even know if I have the grades or test scores to make it happen. You have a perfect GPA and scored high on the tests. You'll be fine. She was right, but it still didn't mean I could make it in. We walked the few blocks to the college and went straight to the main building. Mom and Dad checked in while I stared at the architecture. And while the tour of the campus was informative, I grew more impatient to see the library. It was so much bigger and better than I'd expected. Even Mom and Dad gasped when we walked inside. Okay, so they were book nerds like me, but at least this meant they weren't staring into each other's eyes or something worse. And all I could think about was the fact that Lewis wasn't here to show me around, to show his favorite section or tell me what inspired the architecture. I pushed the thoughts away and moved to one of the sections. Many of the books were in languages I didn't understand. A few had words I vaguely recognized from studying Gaelic. It wasn't until Mom tapped me on my shoulder that I noticed how dark it had grown outside. I set the book I'd been reading aside and stretched. Enjoying yourself? Mom smiled and sat at the desk next to me. Apparently more than I thought. Where's Dad? I rubbed my eyes. The book of mythology I'd been reading still called to me, but I pushed it away. I'd have to look for a copy of it when I got home. She nodded toward the front of the library. He's getting the application information for you. We need to get going if you want to eat dinner with Lewis's family. Oh, right. I grabbed my bag and stood. Why didn't you grab me before? Mom lifted an eyebrow. You don't think we tried? I blushed and followed her out of the library. This wasn't the first time I'd gotten lost in a book, and we all knew it wouldn't be the last. Dad held the door open for us and gave me a side hug as we left. It's a good thing we chose this tour for the last of the day, or we would have missed everything else, he chuckled. Sorry. I climbed in the back of the car. How was the rest of the tour? There wasn't much more. Your dad found a book on mechanics, and that was it for him. Mom patted his arm. I glanced through the papers Dad had picked up. And you? Mom turned and grinned. I just toured every part of the library that I had access to, and a few that were for students only. Typical. I stared at one of the papers. You got us a library card? Dad winked at me through the mirror. Of course. If I'd have known that, I would have taken the mythology book with me. I could have had it done by the time we left. Since it was dark outside, there weren't many sights to see, so I decided to go through messages from my friends. Parties, hangouts, and lots of movie watching. I preferred being where I was, but this was the last spring break I had before I graduated. Homesickness hit for the first time since I'd set foot on the plane. Maybe Mom and Dad should have waited until graduation to bring me here. We pulled up to an old building with a well-manicured lawn and lights on the front that you normally wouldn't see on a church building. Okay, so this was pretty cool. I jumped out of the car and took the stone steps up to Lewis's house. The homesickness was still there lingering, but I would pay attention to it later. Lewis opened the door with a grin. Welcome to my home. I stepped inside and turned in a circle. This is so much cooler than I expected. And that was saying something. The chapel was still wide open, but had been covered in paintings and pictures of the family. Pews were replaced by couches and a large television, but the old organ still sat in one corner. Lewis showed us to the back of the church, where the priest's quarters had been turned to a modern kitchen. A woman looked up from the stove and smiled. "Ah, you must be Heidi." She wiped her hands. "Lewis hasn't stopped talking about you." I blushed. "It's nice to meet you. These are my parents." Mom stepped forward and held out a hand. "Thank you for having us over for dinner. Your house is lovely." "Thank you. It's drafty and possibly haunted, but we love it here." I blinked. "Haunted?" Lewis rolled his eyes. "Mom believes many of the legends. Don't mind her." "But is it really haunted?" I glanced around, half expecting a ghost to pop up at any moment. Something I'd kind of been hoping for since I got to Ireland. Too many mythology books, I guess. "No. Come, let me show you the art I was telling you about." Lewis took my hand and dragged me away while Mom and Dad discussed the possibility of ghosts with his mom. "Sorry about that. I tell her all the time that it's not true." I suppressed a shiver. "You're sure?" Lewis nodded and pointed up at the windows near the ceiling. "The wind whistles through the glass, and it sounds a bit eerie, but I've been up until sunrise before with no hint of anything supernatural." "Too bad. That would be really cool." I pointed to the paintings on the wall. "Are those yours?" "No, they're my dad's. Mine are this way." He led me into another room, and I immediately recognized several of the pieces from the pictures he'd shown me. "I keep my art in here so I don't make a mess in the rest of the house. Mum sells some of them in the village when she can sneak them away from the house." I laughed. "I love your mom already." Lewis rubbed the back of his neck. "She takes a bit to get used to, but I do love her." "And your dad? Is he around?" "He's still working out in the field. He'll be in soon." Lewis glanced over at his bed and gasped, then quickly wrapped one of his drawings in his blankets. I peeked over his shoulder. "What's that one?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Just something I'm working on, but it's not ready yet." "Can I see it?" I reached forward, but he pulled away. "Not yet." He turned me toward the door. "Let's go. I think I heard Dad." Nothing sparked my curiosity more than to be ushered away from something. I didn't hear anything. Lewis shut the door behind us. "No? Well, maybe it was Mum telling us dinner is ready." I glanced back at his room one more time, then allowed him to pull me toward the kitchen. "So, have you lived here in this house your whole life?" "Since I was a baby. It's all I've ever known." He took plates off a shelf to set the table. "I know all the best hiding places in here and could sneak snacks while they were still hot." "He thinks he got away with it, but I always knew right where he was." His mom beamed as she set a pot of stew on the table. My mouth watered. I'd been waiting for this ever since Lewis told me how good it was. His mom dished it up just as Lewis's dad came inside. He kissed his wife's cheek, then went to wash up. I took my bowl from her. "Lewis told me all about how good your stew is." "He has to say that. He's my son." She smiled and dished out another bowl. "I don't know. That hasn't stopped Heidi before." Mom smirked. I huffed. "Hey, that was only one time." Mom raised an eyebrow. "Okay, twice. But you should have given up on the bitter melon the first time." I picked up my spoon and tried a bite. Lewis was right. His mom's recipe won. The broth was rich, the vegetables were perfect, and the lamb was to die for. "I need this recipe." Mom pointed to her bowl. "It's so wonderful." Lewis's mom beamed. "Thank you. The recipe is simple. I'll write it down for you when we're finished." Dad looked up from his stew. "Having this every day works for me." Mom patted him on the shoulder. "Not every day, dear." "I don't know, Mom. I think I'm with Dad on this one." I stared down at my now empty bowl. That went way too fast. I took a slice of soda bread and smeared butter on it. "Would you like some more, dear?" Lewis's mom gestured to my bowl. I held it out. "Yes, please." I shivered as we sat up in the tower of the church. It's beautiful up here. Lewis wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "This is where I come to paint when I'm tired of my room. Just don't tell Mum." My lips are sealed. I leaned out. I can see why. Are the landscapes painted from what you can see out here? Aye. Lewis rested his elbows on the ledge. I'd hoped to get a few more done so I could submit them with my application, but I've been distracted lately. Oh? I hope it was for something good at least. I turned to face him. He ran a thumb along my jawline, sending shivers through me. It's very good. I moved closer, anticipating his kiss. He leaned down and brought his lips to mine, wrapping his arms around me. Hide? Oh, never mind. Lewis and I jumped apart as Mom turned to leave. I was pretty sure my face was as red as hers as I moved toward her. Did you need something? I tried to catch my breath when I really just wanted to go back to the kiss. No, I just wanted to tell you we were ready to leave when you are. Mom avoided my eyes. I sighed. It's okay. I'll be down in a sec. Mom nodded and half tripped, half ran down the last few steps. Lewis shook with laughter when I turned back to him. I guess that means I have to go. I took his hands in mine. Sorry for the interruption. He hugged me to him. It's all right. We should have known at least one of them would check up on us. It's probably better anyway. I have to get up early, and you have another day of touring. I nodded. We're going to Kilkenny tomorrow. I suppose you're working all day? Let's go ask. I would like to go with you if possible, since it's my last day. I swallowed hard and moved toward the stairs. The thought brought tears to my eyes, and I didn't need him to see them. Our parents were in the kitchen when we got downstairs. Dad stood holding a container of stew, and Mom had the rest of the soda bread. Lewis cleared his throat. Da, can I go with them to Kilkenny tomorrow? I'll have all my chores done before I go. His dad looked between us and then over at my parents. I suppose if it's all right with our parents, just be prepared to make up the work next week. Of course. Thank you. Lewis kissed me on the cheek. See you tomorrow, then. See you tomorrow. I practically ran out of the house. If being interrupted earlier hadn't been enough to make me die of embarrassment, his small peck on my cheek sent me over the edge. Mom and Dad would never let this go. They were silent on the way home, but I could see their barely suppressed grins, and I could have sworn I caught a snicker here and there. I couldn't take it anymore. Okay, that's enough. What's enough? Mom shot me an innocent look. I don't see what you're so worked up about. I'm the one who should be embarrassed, walking in on you like that. I shook my head. You weren't the one walked in on. Dad held up a hand. I have to side with your mom on this one. How about we stop with the kissing? You've known him for a week. Are you kidding? Didn't you two get engaged a week after you met? I smiled down at the heart emoji text Lewis sent me and sent one back along with a 4-leaf clover. Hey, it was 3 weeks, and that's besides the point. We were 5 years older than you, Mom retorted. I raised my eyebrows. You mean Dad was that much older? You were only a year older than me. Mom sputtered. Yes, well, we were ready. You're not. I rolled my eyes and undid my seatbelt. Come on. I care about Lewis, but it's not like I'm expecting anything to happen. We go home the day after tomorrow, and who knows if I'll ever see him again. Sweetie, you're right. But maybe not. If you decide to come here for school, you can see him then. Mom climbed out of the car. As much as we tease, it's nice to see you with a boy. Ouch. I mean, she had a point. I'd never actually had a boyfriend, but still. Okay, well, good night. I went into my room and dropped on my bed, not bothering to take off my shoes. It was an awesome day, but I was exhausted. I just needed 5 more days here. Maybe longer. We'd only scraped the surface of what I wanted to do. I rolled over and texted Jody. Tired of spring break yet? Nope. Tired of Ireland yet? Both of us knew that would never happen. Not even a little bit. I can't believe it's almost over. How's the boy? I bit my lip before replying. I got my first kiss. Jody's reaction was pretty much what I expected. A bundle of emojis and then an immediate phone call. You can't just tell me that over text. I need details. I was just going to tell you at home. And I would never have spoken to you again. Now, details, woman. I laughed and told her about our day and how it had ended right where I first met him, and then about what had just happened. Jody sighed. So romantic. I like this guy. I agree with you on the guy, but it's not exactly romantic to have your mom walk in when you're kissing someone. I kicked my shoes off onto the floor. Oh, well, that part is humiliating. But kissing you on the bridge? That's totally the sweetest thing ever. Even if you did think he was a creeper the first time you met him. I held up a finger even though she couldn't see me. Hey, I was coming off no sleep and the guy just shows up. How was I supposed to know he was our guide? Or that he was completely adorable? The thought of leaving him is killing me. This is why we don't start dating on vacation, she gasped. I forgot to tell you. Guess who asked me out yesterday? I sat up straight. Dylan? Finally? She scoffed. No, he still hasn't asked me. Not him. Austin. Wait, your ex-boyfriend, Austin? Yes, he asked me to dinner and a movie. I waited for her to continue. And did you go? Of course. I didn't want to just stay home. Jody launched into the whole story, not leaving out any details, including how they kissed at her doorstep. I smacked my forehead. Jody, he's such bad news for you. I know, but he's so cute, and you weren't here to tell me no. Typical. I've been gone for a few days. You couldn't handle it until I got back? Nope. Oh, hey, that's him on the other line. See you in 2 days. Hey, Jody, no. It was too late. She hung up on me to talk to the guy she knew I didn't want her to hang out with. It wasn't that he was a terrible person. It was that he was terrible for her. They fought all the time because he tended to like to do things his way, which would have been fine if Jody wasn't the exact same way. Their dates tended to end in tears. A knock on my door was followed by Mom poking her head in. Hey, we're going to Fiona's. Want to come with us? I promise I won't bring up the, you know. I glanced at the clock. We'd left Lewis's home fairly early, and the exhaustion from earlier had worn off while talking to Jody. Sure. We put on jackets and shoes and walked down the pathway to the house. I loved the wide open space where I could see the lights off in the distance. Animals called to each other, and it was magical enough that I half hoped I'd hear the call of a banshee or some other creature in the distance. Fiona answered her door and limped back to her chair. You brought Heidi this time. I did. She wasn't asleep yet. Mom sat on a couch next to Fiona. How are you feeling? Like death. Fiona wiped her eyes and peered at me. You're a little too thin for my taste. Maggie, you should feed her more. Mom blushed. She eats enough for 2 teen boys, I assure you. Fiona harumphed. Well, she needs more. I was pretty sure I ate plenty, just not enough for 2 teen boys. I glared at Mom but didn't say anything. Her pursed lips told me she was biting back what she really wanted to say. I hear you like the farm boy. Fiona stared at me. He's a good lad. Yes he is. The woman scared me to death, even though I was twice her height. I think it's nice that you let them make the church into a house. She snorted. Good riddance. That darn church was too haunted for my taste. I leaned forward. You think it's haunted too? All kinds of strange things happened in there. We tried all kinds of things to get rid of it, but nothing helped. When they asked to make it into a home, I couldn't sign the papers fast enough. The poor Dunes. I'm surprised none of them have disappeared yet. Mom interrupted to ask what pills Fiona needed to take, so I stood to look at pictures. I recognized Lewis or his parents in several of the pictures, but there were so many others from all over the world. Even though she scared me, Fiona was someone who seemed to go for whatever she wanted, and I had to admit I loved that about her. The room went silent, so I turned to see what was going on. Mom and Fiona stared over at me, clearly waiting for my answer. What? I looked over at Dad, but he was staring down at his hands. You want to come live here? Fiona asked. I glanced back over at Dad and then Mom. Neither of them was meeting my eye. I don't know. I've thought about it, but that would mean leaving my parents behind. Fiona waved for me to come closer. It's up to you, dearie. You're old enough to make the decision, so don't let what they say influence you. Dad cleared his throat. We never said she couldn't come. It's completely up to her, and I would appreciate it if you stopped telling her to go against what we want. I would never say that. Fiona leaned forward and patted Dad's knee. I like this one, Maggie. You did well. Mom sat up straighter. I think so too. Fiona took me by the hand. Would you mind helping me to my room? I need to sleep. I caught Mom's nod and helped Fiona up. Sure, your room is this way? The walk to her room seemed to take forever, even though it couldn't have been more than 20 feet. Fiona would shuffle for a moment, then have to stop so she could catch her breath. When we finally got to her bed, I helped her in, saddened by how frail she was. Fiona closed her eyes, but grabbed my hand as I turned to leave. I would love to have you come and live with me, if you will. I still need to get into the school, but if I do, we'll let you know. She nodded and seemed to fall asleep almost immediately. I pulled the blankets over her and went to find my parents. The walk back to our cottage was quieter than before, which I didn't think was possible. I hadn't even agreed to move here yet, but apparently the thought was enough to depress everyone. Dad made tea while Mom got out mugs and honey. I tried to start a conversation a few times, but it just fell flat. Guys, look, I haven't agreed to anything. I haven't decided where to go, and quite frankly, leaving home scares me right now. Just stop panicking over something I haven't even thought about until this week. Dad reached out and ruffled my hair. This isn't easy on any of us. You need to just be a little patient while we adjust. I told you, I don't know that it's even going to happen. Jody and I have had plans to go to school together since we were 10. I'll probably do that. Ireland will just have to wait a few more years. The mood was a little lighter after that, but I could still feel the weight of the decision on my shoulders. Why couldn't things just stay how they were when I left for Ireland? Jody and I would go to the local college and work at some lame diner somewhere to make money. Then we'd get married and travel the world. Later. For now, I just wanted to be a kid. Chapter 6. Nothing prepared me for the cuteness that was Kilkenny. I'd seen several other adorable villages, but this one had a quaintness to it that had me squealing at every turn. We found a place to park as soon as we arrived, and since the village was small enough, we decided to walk for the day. Mom and Dad walked up ahead of us, stopping whenever they saw something in the windows that they liked. I was too busy taking pictures with Lewis and every sight we came upon to care about souvenirs. Lewis could only chuckle at my gasp as we walked around the corner to find Kilkenny Castle right in front of us. It's right there, I whispered. Aye. Care to take a tour? Lewis took my hand in his. I nodded. Why didn't you warn me that I'd see it right there? Because then I would have missed your reaction. Lewis dragged me up the hill so we could catch up with my parents. There was already a line of people waiting for the tour to start. I took one of the pamphlets at the table and hugged it to me. Out of the thousands of castles in Ireland, this was my favorite. I'd been waiting the whole trip to see this, and Mom knew it would be a bad idea if we missed touring the grounds and inside. The tour went slowly, but I didn't even care. I had to get as many pictures as I could in each room. Lewis pointed out small details that the tour guide missed, things that only an architect would know. We got to the old photo gallery and I stared up in awe. It's like the coolest ballroom ever, except that there are too many things in here for them to have a ball. They do weddings here. I'm sure they could clear things out for a ball. Lewis leaned in. Do you like dancing? Or you just like the fancy dresses? Both. I could just imagine a ball happening in here. I had just gotten to the part where the prince appeared when I realized Lewis was talking to me. Sorry, what did you say? Lewis held up his phone. There's a dance place here where we could go dancing if you'd like. I mean, if you have time. I shrugged. We can ask my parents. We don't need to be to the airport until a little later, so it might be fine. What's fine? Mom took a picture of us. Lewis wanted to know if we wanted to go dancing tonight. At least, I hoped it was for all of us. Otherwise, I totally just invited my parents on a date. Lewis handed his phone to Mom. There are a few couple of options, and since Heidi said she likes dancing, I thought it might be a fun last thing to do before you leave, unless you had something else in mind. Mom waved at Dad and waited for him to come over. Lewis suggested dancing tonight. What do you think? That beats staying at the cottage to pack. He leaned closer to Mom. Unless you think they want to go dancing by themselves. No, you're fine coming. Besides, how will we get home? It wasn't that I didn't want to spend time with Lewis alone. It was more that we were in a strange town, in a different country, and I was still in high school. Well, and the car thing. Lewis checked his watch. We have a few hours before then, so let's go see a few more places. Are you all hungry? I am. I put my phone in my bag. I have just the pub then. We took a few more pictures of the yard and then walked down toward the older part of town. This house used to belong to a woman who was accused of witchcraft. Mom doesn't like coming in here, but the food is deadly. Is that good? I walked inside. Lewis snapped his fingers. Right, you wouldn't know that term. Yes, it means the food is very good. Deadly was definitely not how I wanted my food to be described, but he'd been right so far with food, so I trusted him. Mostly. We were seated in the back and handed menus. Lewis set his aside. Mind if I order for you? Sure. I set my menu on the table. Just no more stew. I love it, but I had it for a snack last night and breakfast this morning. Fair enough. He ordered bangers and mash for the two of us, so my parents decided to go with the same thing. Mom read through the history while we waited for food, then pulled out a map of the town. We circled the sites we wanted to see before it got too late. Lunch arrived, and I was relieved to see that it was sausage and mashed potatoes. Comfort food that was perfect for my mood. The reality that we were leaving the next day was beginning to set in, and had put a damper on the fact that we were eating in a place that was around 800 years old. Lewis squeezed my hand. Don't be so sad. You still have tonight. Thanks. I forced a smile. I'll be fine. It was kind of pointless to feel bad about leaving when I still had today, so I shoved it away and enjoyed the rest of the tour. We went into a couple of churches, and then Mom insisted on going souvenir shopping. I bought a cute little rag doll for Jody for good luck and found a 4-leaf clover necklace for me. Once Mom had found what she wanted, we walked our things back up to the car so we could go dancing. The dance club was a bit different here. The music was Irish for one thing, with popular music from the US here and there. Mom and Dad stuck a little closer than they had before because drinks were allowed, but still allowed Lewis and I a little space. A slow song came on just as I was about to insist on taking a break. Lewis held out a hand to me. Shall we dance? I nodded and moved closer to him. Mom and Dad kept their distance so I could enjoy the dance a little more. I wrapped my arms around him and laid my head against his chest. His heartbeat was rapid, thumping against my ear. He said something, but all I caught was the vibrations. I lifted my head, our cheeks brushing against each other. What did you say? Lewis leaned closer so I could hear him. I said you're a good dancer. Thanks, you're not so bad yourself. I let him twirl me, my skirt swirling out around us. I knew it was the right choice to wear that day. Will you go back to America and forget about me? He met my eyes. I shook my head. I could never forget about you. And I meant it too. No matter what happened, I would never forget him. The perfect guy in the perfect country for my first kiss. It couldn't get any better than that. The song ended and went to an Irish drinking song. Not quite the song we wanted for a slow dance. Lewis pulled away and showed me a few moves. It took a few times, but I was able to get the jig down. It was close to the ones I'd learned at home watching videos. If anyone had asked me what the perfect send-off from Ireland would be, I would have said dancing in a heartbeat. The laughter and music allowed me to let go of the homesickness and sadness that I was leaving and just enjoy myself. Tomorrow, I could let it all come back. The trip back to the cottage was lively as we sang to the music on the radio. I held tightly to Lewis's hand, worried that the evening would end at any moment. We pulled up to the cottage where his car sat, and Dad let both of us out. I watched their headlights as they drove away, then turned to Lewis. I guess this is it? I wish I could be there for goodbyes tomorrow, but Dad has a full day of chores. He leaned against his car. Tonight works too. I think tomorrow's pretty full for us as well. I hesitated. If I were to come to college here, would you show me around? Maybe want to hang out? He brightened. You're going to attend school here? I shrugged. I don't know. It's a thought. I'd stay with Fiona and take care of her, but leaving my parents... They could come and visit, right? Or you could just visit them. It would be no different from if you went away to college in a different state. He had a point. I still need to think about it, but you didn't answer my question. If I did come, would you be there for me? He stood up straight and opened the back door to his car to pull out 2 packages. One of them he set on the top of the car, and the other one he kept in his hand. I picked this out for you a while ago, but wasn't sure if I should give it to you. I took the small box and opened it. Inside was a clotter ring. It was small and intricate. Wow! I hope you like it. He took it out of the box. I hoped you wouldn't figure out that I was getting it for you instead of Mum when you tried it on. I had no idea. I kept staring at the ring. Lewis's hands shook as he held it out. You put it on this finger with the heart facing outward if you're single, or towards you if you're in a relationship. I would have given it to you anyway, but I was hoping that you would consider wearing it toward you. Mom had told me about these rings years ago, and I'd always wanted one. I took the ring from him and slid it onto my finger, the heart facing me. It was a little loose on my finger, but I liked that it wouldn't get stuck. Thank you. It's perfect. You're welcome. He turned. This one I want you to wait to open. It's a little more personal, so I'd rather not be there when you open it. Even with the wrapping, I could tell it was a picture of some sort. I nodded and hugged it to me. Thank you. I feel bad. I didn't get you anything. He grinned and leaned close to me. Having you here was enough of a gift. Just come back to me someday. I will. I'm not sure when, but I'll be back. I reached up and kissed him, then turned to walk down the pathway. You sure you don't want to ride? He called from behind me. I shook my head. I'll be fine. I need to clear my head. Text you tomorrow. He waved and climbed in his car, but didn't move. If I knew him, he was waiting for me to get all the way to the cottage before he left. I allowed the tears to flow as I walked. It was easy enough to pretend like I was okay, but inside I was torn. Mom and Dad knew better than to stop me as I went to my room. They would most likely come in later, but for now, I just needed to be by myself. My last day in Ireland. A week ago, I didn't even know I was going to be here, and now it was almost over. Not cool. We spent the morning cleaning up the cottage. We didn't know when the next person would stay here, but we didn't want mice to take up residence. I kept glancing out the window to see if Lewis was outside, but his dad must have had work for him in a different part of the farm. We finished the last of the packing and locked up the cottage. Fiona stood at the stove when we arrived at her house. Mom took over and I helped her back to her chair. You're leaving? Fiona asked. Yeah, I need to get back to school. I sat on the couch next to her. Thank you for letting us visit. Fiona nodded. It's your mother you should thank. I was far too stubborn for so long. I missed out on most of your life. I shrugged. It's okay, it all worked out. And I'm here now. Ah, she grabbed my hand. I see he gave you the ring. You knew he was going to give me this. I twisted the ring around my finger. She chuckled. Aye, he showed it to me when he brought me some eggs. It's quite beautiful. I nodded. It is. I can't believe he got it without me noticing. We were together the whole time. And his other gift, how did you like it? I hadn't opened it. It was easier to pack whatever it was wrapped up. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I'm waiting till I get home. Mom brought Fiona's breakfast to her, interrupting our conversation. I stood and straightened up Fiona's house while Mom helped with pills and food. Dad stoked the fire and brought in more wood. When it was time to head for the airport, I hugged Fiona. Thank you again. For everything. You're welcome, dearie. Come back and visit, won't you? She grasped my hand tightly in hers. I will. I waited for Mom and Dad to say their goodbyes, then we went out to the car. I couldn't believe I was on my way home. Mom and I took several pictures on the way back to Dublin. The city was decked out for St. Patrick's Day, and it lifted my spirits. At least I got to see what it would look like on the actual day. We checked in and went to find our gate. Now that we were here, I was actually excited to get back home. There were only a couple of months left of my senior year, and I couldn't wait to show off all my new souvenirs to Jody. Mom wrapped an arm around me. "Are you glad we came?" This was beyond amazing. Thank you. I leaned my head against her shoulder. "Do you think Fiona will be okay by herself?" "Lewis's mom will be taking care of her full time, and they have nurses who will be coming when she can't be there." She kissed the top of my head. "I'm just glad we could see her." I sat up, surprised. "I didn't know his mom was taking care of her." "She hasn't been, but we arranged it while you were off in the tower with Lewis." "Wow. I didn't think we'd been up there for that long." Mom stood. "I'm going to find a magazine or something for the trip home. Want anything?" I shook my head. "I'm good." My phone buzzed and I smiled when I saw that it was Lewis. "Safe travels. Sorry I couldn't be there to see you off." "It's all right. We said our goodbyes already. Thanks again for the gifts." Surely I could come up with something better than that. Or not. Any more than that, and he would ask if I opened the other gift. The one that was now on its way into the plane. What had I done? What if it was fragile? I scrambled to the window and watched the workers put all the luggage into the plane, as if I'd be able to figure out which bag was mine. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom put a hand on my shoulder. "Nothing. I just shouldn't have packed the gift from Lewis until I knew what it was." I turned and slumped into the chair. Mom raised her eyebrows. "You didn't open it." I shook my head. I was too depressed that I was leaving, and I didn't want another reminder. "Ah, I get it." She pulled me in for a hug. "We'll open it as soon as we get to the car at home, okay?" "I guess that works." I sighed. "Why didn't you just warn me to stay away from him while we were here?" Mom laughed. "You really think that would have made any difference? You were head over heels for him the moment you met him." "Not the moment." I told her what had happened when he first introduced himself. "No wonder you ran back to the car so fast." She looked up at the screen above us. "Ah, look, it's time for us to board." I jumped up from my seat. Finally. We joined the line and showed our tickets. It wasn't until we were actually on the plane that I finally let myself admit that we were leaving Ireland. I stared out at the tarmac, and while I couldn't see anything but the airport, I imagined the places we'd visited in the last week. Lewis was out there somewhere working with his dad. Maybe he was thinking about me. Maybe he was thinking about something else. I just hoped he knew how much he'd meant to me in the time we spent together. It was late at night when we finally landed. Dad was able to sleep on the plane, but Mom and I were pretty much zombies by the time we got our luggage and headed to the car. The drive home was somewhat terrifying since we were now back on the other side of the road. I didn't care though. I was back. Yeah, I missed Ireland, but my bed, my real bed, called to me. The moment we pulled into the driveway, I jumped out of the car and grabbed my bags. Instead of waiting for Dad, I used the key under our mat to unlock the door. Our house had the musty smell from not having anyone in it for the last week. I turned on the fan in the living room, then went straight to my room. My room. With the drawings of dragons and fairies that I'd had hanging on my wall since I was 5, and my trophies from debate and dance. And so much green everywhere. Mom had apparently had a rough time packing for me because clothes were everywhere. Those would get cleaned up tomorrow. Or maybe the next day. Tomorrow, I had sleeping to do. I opened my bag to find pajamas and threw all the dirty clothes into a pile for later. The gift from Lewis sat at the bottom, waiting for me to open it. Even though my body screamed for sleep, I pulled the gift out and unwrapped it. It was the picture he'd hidden from me at his house. I recognized the castle in the distance, and the girl staring off at the sunset was me in my shamrock-covered skirt and blouse. His shading and detail were breathtaking. It wasn't like I'd ever had any issues with how I looked or anything, but Lewis captured me in a way that made me feel beautiful. I wiped my eyes and sent a text thanking him for the gift. Lewis had already framed it, so I took down a few of my dragon pictures and hung it on the wall so it would be one of the first things I saw every morning. Out of all the souvenirs I'd bought in Ireland, all the memories I'd made, this was by far my favorite. Chapter 7. St. Patrick's Day had finally arrived, and I was ready for it. I tightened my ponytail and smiled up at the drawing on my wall. Lewis and I had talked for hours the night before, and while I was exhausted, it didn't matter. This was my favorite day. Mom went all out with breakfast that morning. Green eggs, green pancakes, and green milk. She would have done green bacon. She'd tried before, but the result wouldn't be good. I sat long enough to eat, then rushed out the door. I wasn't about to lose a second of time celebrating. Jody met me at the front door, and I was surprised to see her decked out in green as well. Hey, you made it. I was afraid I'd be the only one today. Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it. Besides, I had to eat my breakfast. I smiled at the random four-leaf clovers and other decorations that teachers had put up sometime over the last couple of days. What made you dress up today? It's your last time walking these halls with everyone staring. I figured it wouldn't be fair for you to get all the strange looks. She linked her arm in mine. I shook my head. You've walked with me all 3 years and never once cared about that. What's going on? Jody was silent for a moment. Remember how I asked you for a pencil the other day? Yeah. We were always borrowing pencils. I wasn't sure what made this time any different. Well, I found something. She let go of my arm and pulled the Trinity College pamphlet out of her notebook. And I realized that it really might be the last time I have this holiday with you. Why didn't you tell me? I took it back from her and put it in my books. Because I haven't decided if I'm even applying. I hadn't taken that out of my bag since we got home. She continued walking. But you didn't even tell me you were considering it. I thought we'd made up our minds on what we wanted to do. We did. But Jody, you should see the place. It's so amazing. And I could get the degree I want there. You could get it here too, you know. Jody stopped in front of her classroom. I get it, though. I just wish you would have told me. I stood there stunned. I just upset my best friend, and I didn't even do anything. Part of me wanted to go explain things better, but the bell was about to ring, and I needed to get to my class. I'd have to talk to her during second period. Physics was no nonsense as usual. No celebrating a holiday in here. Well, except for my outfit. That was plenty of celebration everywhere I went. Mr. Spitzer handed out our graded tests, and I was quite thrilled with the 95 I got. Not bad for having the test right after spring break. We were starting in on our last term, which meant getting ready for finals. It was nice to have a little distraction from the worry at the back of my mind. Jody and I rarely got mad at each other, and I couldn't remember the last I'd seen her look at me with the hurt in her eyes like she had that morning. And when she sat on the other side of the classroom in second period, I knew something was going on. It wasn't until lunch that I finally had a chance to talk to her. She'd grabbed her lunch before I even got to the cafeteria and sat with some of her drama friends. Luckily for me, those friends knew I was her friend as well and moved over as soon as I approached the table. Hey guys, ready for the play? I figured that was a safe enough conversation. Yeah, we were just talking about ways to beat out last year's Into the Woods. It was kind of an epic opening night. Jody set her fork down. Nothing was going to beat last year's reveal of the secret admirer, that was for sure. I wouldn't try to beat that one. Just have someone juggling fire or something. Jody clapped her hand over her mouth, trying not to laugh. It wasn't my fault she had been drinking milk when I said that. The others seemed to think I was being serious, so I was glad at least she got my joke. But seriously, wouldn't flamethrowers at a play be awesome? Let's make sure Heidi doesn't show up on the first night of the play, okay? Jody wiped her mouth, still laughing. I put a hand over my heart. I'm insulted, and here I was planning to get front and center tickets. By that time, the others had started excusing themselves from the table. They knew better than to stick around once I got started. Maybe I needed to stop being so out there with my plans. I looked up from my mashed potatoes. So, about this morning. Jody held a hand up. That's on me. I overreacted. At least I think so. Are you really thinking of going? I sighed. I don't know. We were going on this tour, and Lewis brought up the fact that he wants to go to that college, and the idea just kind of stuck. And then... Aha! It is because of that boy. Jody leaned forward, her eyebrows narrowing. Would you really ditch me for a boy? Did you not see the picture hanging in my room? I'd shown her the next day so we could both squeal about it. And no, I don't know, it wasn't just him. Mom and Dad arranged a tour of the school, and it's so cool. It's not even a for sure thing. Jody reached over and grabbed my hand. Don't stay here just because we agreed to go to the same school in 7th grade. If you want to go, you should go. Also, you have mashed potatoes on your bracelet. Curse the charms that dangled from the chain. Oops. Besides, Mom and Dad kinda have different plans for me too. Jody moved the vegetables around on her tray. I didn't know how to tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Where do they want you to go? NYU? It's where they went, where they met, and they want to keep it in the family. Most parents want you to stick close to home. Not my parents. They want me to move across the country. But it's closer to Ireland and my college, so there's that. I held out a pinky. Let's make a pinky pact. Jody stared at me. A pinky pact? Yeah, it's like a pinky promise, but it's more of a pact. Let's promise that we'll go where we want to go and not just where someone else wants us to go. She hooked her finger on mine. That's a pact I can make. Although, I have to admit, NYU sounds like a pretty good school. And it's in New York. Well, yes, that's what I gathered from the name of the school. I ducked as she threw a piece of her roll at me. Traveling to New York was almost as big of a dream for Jody as Ireland was for me. Okay, not quite. She wasn't quite as fanatical. Think I should apply then? She set her roll down and pushed her tray to the side. Why not? You'd make your mom and dad happy, and maybe I'll apply there too, just to see what happens. Even though I was scared to death of the idea of moving to New York, it was irrational, but what fear isn't? Jody snorted. Good one. I grinned. Thanks, but seriously though, the pact works for us too. If nothing else works, we can go to school here. You do realize we've probably missed most of the deadlines for colleges, right? We probably should have thought about this months ago. Jody picked up her tray. Yeah, but when do I ever do things the right way? I waved as she got up and left for drama practice, feeling lighter than I had all day. I finished off my green cake and stood to go to class. Maybe I would apply to Trinity College after all. The worst that could happen was not getting accepted. Mom sat at the kitchen table when I got home. Hey, sweetie, how was school? Did they love your dress? Jody did. A few of the freshmen said something. What you working on? I sat next to her and realized she was sorting old photos. Are those from Fiona? Yes, they're from a box she gave me. I fit what I could in my bag and took back the rest that morning. She wrote on the back of one and set it aside. I picked up a picture. Is this you? Yep. Apparently your grandma sent her pictures even when she wasn't speaking to us. I had no idea. Mom pointed to another pile. Did you get your test score back yet? I pulled the paper out of my bag and slapped it down on the table. I guess I did know my stuff. This is wonderful. Good job. She pointed to the fridge. You know the drill. I'm a senior, Mom. I don't need to tack my good grades up on the fridge. But I did anyway. I had to take down a few other papers for it to fit, but I got it up there. I found out Jody might go to NYU. Mom looked up from the picture she was labeling. Oh, what happens with your local college plans then? I can still go even if she doesn't. I felt my phone buzz and looked to see who it was. Gotta go. Tell Lewis hi from me. Mom shot me a smug grin. How do parents do that? I pushed back my chair and hurried toward the stairs. Lewis, hey, isn't it super late there right now? It is, but I couldn't go to sleep knowing I hadn't talked to you today. Did you have a good St. Patrick's Day? He chuckled. It's still going, but yes, it's been a good day. How about you? I flopped onto my bed and stared up at his picture. Heard anything from college yet? There was a pause, and I could almost see his grin through the phone. That's why I'm calling. I got in with a scholarship. I squealed. I knew you would. Your art deserves to be seen. Thank you. I'm still reeling from it. What about you? Any news from colleges? In other words, have I applied yet? Not yet. I gripped my phone. I think I'm going to apply tonight, just to see what happens. This time it was his turn to cheer, and I had to laugh at his whoop. That's fantastic. Ireland wouldn't know what hit it. Well, technically, it should already know me, but I get what you're saying. My eyes drifted over to another picture on my wall. How's Fiona? Mum says she's all right, getting weaker but still as fiery as ever. Lewis mumbled something to someone. My parents wanted to send their regards. My mum does as well. There was more muffled talking on the other end. Dad says it's time to go. Talk to you again tomorrow. Only if it doesn't cost a fortune to call me, something I reminded him of every time he called. You're worth every penny. He said goodbye and hung up. I rolled over and climbed off my bed to get my laptop. The page was already open to the application. Everything was filled out. I just had to hit submit. The pact Jody and I had made rang in my ears, and I pushed the button before I could change my mind. Then applied for NYU as well. Might as well get some options out there. Mom called from downstairs, so I shut my computer. I put myself out there, and now it was up to the universe to decide what would happen. Chapter 8. The universe was a trickster. But maybe that's what happened when my favorite thing in the world was Irish fables. A leprechaun or something must have taken over when I sent my applications. Every college I applied to told me I got in. I mean, my grades and ACT scores were high, so I kinda did it to myself, but that's beside the point. I'd hoped a couple of them would reject me, so the choice was clear. That meant I still had a choice to make. I just made a poster with the names of all the colleges on my wall so I could throw darts to help me decide when Jody came bursting through the door. You'll never guess where I got in. She held up a paper. I took it from her. You got into NYU. That's awesome. She bit her lip. Will you be mad at me if I decide to go there? Not if you help me figure out what I'm supposed to do. I nodded toward the wall. Welcome to my decision-making board. Her eyes widened. You got into all of them? Or you're just deciding which one to apply to? Because most of the dates are coming really fast. I pointed to the pile of letters on my bed. There were more, but these 4 are the ones I'm deciding between. Although, I guess I can take off the state college since you got into the one you wanted. No, keep it. She picked up a dart. Do your parents care that you're doing this? Nope, that's what spackle is for. I picked up another dart. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I'm not. I have a dartboard behind the signs. But your face was priceless. I closed my eyes and aimed toward the board, then let it fly. Maybe you shouldn't close your eyes. Also, you might need the spackle anyway. Jody's voice came from a different spot than where she'd been standing. I opened my eyes to find a nice hole about an inch below the picture Lewis had given me. Oops, maybe I should take that off the wall. Yeah, you probably should have thought about that before you started. Jody stood back and aimed. Her dart landed right between Ireland and New York. Well, that didn't help. That's easy for you, New York. I tried again, this time keeping my eyes open. The dart landed on the state college. Jody frowned. Do you really want to do that? I shook my head. Let's try this again. After throwing them around for the next few minutes, the decision was no closer to being made. Except the question of me being a good dart player. That was a definite no. All the posters had holes in them except for Trinity. I flopped on my bed. I give up. If you ask me, I think you already got your answer. She walked past the signs and pointed at the lone hole in the wall. You knew where your picture was, even with your eyes closed. I bit my lip. As much as I wanted to argue, I knew she was right. My heart was definitely back in Ireland. It's half a world away, though. That's what airplanes are for. Jody sorted through the letters on the bed and picked up the one from Dublin. Do it. You'll regret it if you don't. Maybe. I found the one from here and held it up. I'm the only child. I'm not so sure Mom and Dad could handle me being so far away. Jody grumbled under her breath. We pinky pacted, remember? We decided we're not going to let anyone else determine where we go. 1, I don't think pinky pacted is a word, and 2, I'm just worried I'm going to Ireland for some boy I knew for a week. I don't want to regret it for the rest of my life. Fair enough, but you've loved Ireland your entire life. I don't think going to school there has anything to do with Lewis. Loving Ireland is slightly different than moving there. I scooped up all the letters and put them on my desk. I'd better get my math done. Want to help? She held her hands up. No math for me, thanks. I have plenty of homework at home. I just had to show you my letter. See you tomorrow. I grabbed my homework and set it on the bed, then hugged Jody. I'm so happy for you. New York won't know what hit it. Broadway, can you imagine? She grinned and waved as she left my room. Math took way longer than it should have thanks to the signs up on my wall, or the text that came from Lewis asking how my day was. I stared at them, wanting to pick up my phone to text him back, but I couldn't. What Jody said made sense, but I still couldn't get over the feeling that I was only going for Lewis. I wasn't about to plan my life around the guy who took me on tours in Ireland. No matter how cute he was or how good his lips felt on mine, I would figure this out, but I had to do it for myself. After a few weeks, the text stopped. Lewis left a few voicemails for me to make sure everything was okay, but I never called him back. The text saying I was okay was impersonal, but it was enough to get the calls to stop as well. School and life kept me busy enough to keep my mind off him. Mostly. I never took off my ring, and the picture still hung on my wall. But I had prom to deal with, and I needed to prepare for my graduation speech. I stepped to the mirror to admire my dress. It was a light blue satin gown that hugged my curves, then flared out at the waist. What do you think? Jody looked over from the makeup desk. It's gorgeous, but I still think you should have gone with the green. The green one was $100 more than this one. I'll take the blue. I glanced at my watch. You should probably change. Our dates will be here any minute. Oh man. She jumped up to put on her dress while I checked my hair and makeup. Mom came up a few minutes later. Are you ready? Dylan and Kyle are here. Yeah, we'll be right down. I made sure my phone and wallet were in the little handbag Mom bought me and breathed out. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Jody turned in a circle. Her short black gown was gorgeous on her. It was something I'd never wear, but it was so perfect for her. How do I look? Dylan won't know what hit him. I grinned and opened the door. Mom stood at the bottom of the stairs with the 2 boys, holding a camera. Ah, here they come. Kyle handed me the corsage he'd bought, and I got his boutonniere from the fridge. He was clearly nervous by the way his hands shook while he tried to open the plastic carton. I'd been surprised when he asked me. He was shy and rarely spoke, but we'd helped each other with physics often enough that he was comfortable talking to me. Jody was beyond ecstatic that Dylan finally asked her out. There were only 6 weeks until we graduated, but at least he did it. After several pictures and pleas from me, we finally left the house and headed for the dance. The gym was decorated like an underwater kingdom. I have to admit, I was pretty proud of it. Jody and I had signed up last minute to help decorate. I'd wanted to do an Irish castle, but that had been voted down pretty quickly. Kyle and I had fun dancing, but my mind kept wandering back to a small Irish village where I'd gone dancing with an Irish boy who held my heart. Nothing compared to that evening. I had to wipe my eyes at the end of the last dance, hoping that Kyle wouldn't notice. That night, as I got ready for bed, I picked up my phone and found Lewis's last text. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I texted back. Sorry it's been so long. I hope you're doing well. There was no response. I set my phone down on the table next to my bed and turned off the lights, hoping that I wasn't too late. Lewis didn't answer again until the day of graduation. Mom apparently sent an invitation to his parents, so he texted to tell me congratulations. I texted back a thanks and put my graduation cap on. My notes went into my bag and I went downstairs to find Mom and Dad. It was time. Mom looked up from flipping pancakes. You look happy this morning. What's up? Lewis texted back. I sat at the table. You know we don't have time to eat all this, right? We would have if you hadn't slept in. She dropped a couple of pancakes on my plate. Eat. You don't want to try to speak on an empty stomach. I raised an eyebrow. I don't think I've ever heard that in my life. She shrugged. Maybe not, but it's true. Fair enough. I'm starving anyway. After breakfast, we drove to the school and walked out to the football field where the graduation would be held. I took my place up on the stage while my parents found seats in the audience. I barely heard any of the other speeches because of the nerves I felt for my own. When it was finally my turn, I stood and walked up to the podium. The words didn't want to come. Jody sent me a few emojis for encouragement, but it wasn't until Lewis sent me a 4-leaf clover that I finally started talking. As we walked up to get our diplomas, the principal mentioned where each person was going to college. Normally, they also added which scholarships we got, but our class was too big to take the time. When they got to my row, I stood and followed my classmates to the stage. Heidi Simmons, Trinity College, Dublin. Jody let out a whoop from the crowd, earning laughter from those around her. I grinned and took the diploma from the principal and shook his hand, then moved down the row of school officials. I turned to face my parents, biting my lip. I hadn't told them my decision. I couldn't. Mom had her hands over her mouth, and Dad winked at me. Relief spread through me. They didn't mind that I was going to Ireland. As soon as graduation was over, Jody ran up and threw her arms around me. You're going! I knew it. I didn't. I hugged her back. In fact, until this morning, I was planning to go with you to New York. But then I heard Mom talking on the phone about my great-grandma's health, and I knew I needed to go. I gave Mr. Wilkins the information this morning. Jody's eyebrows raised. Is she okay? It's more just age, but I wanted to go and help. Oh, there are my parents. Yeah, I'd better go find mine. I want more details later. Jody waved and went to find her family. Mom and Dad pushed their way through the crowd. Mom pulled me into a hug, and Dad hugged us both. Oh, sweetie, I'm going to miss you so much. Me too, and if it's all right with you, I'd like to go sooner, so I can help with Fiona. Mom nodded. We're going to go with you, at least for now, but we'll talk about that later. First, we're going to celebrate. As we drove to the restaurant, I got another text from Lewis, asking how things went. I wanted to tell him I was coming, but I needed to get the details set first. I told him things were good and promised I'd call. For the first time since I stepped off the plane, I finally allowed myself to relax. I knew where I was supposed to be. Chapter 9. School had been out for a few weeks, and my bags were already packed to leave. I left most of the pictures up on my wall, but I'd packed up the one from Lewis to take with me. Mom and Dad would only be taking a few things with them. They were going to get me settled and make sure Fiona was okay, and head home. I couldn't believe I was making this trip just a few months after we'd gone the first time. The flight seemed shorter this time, and within hours, I was back on Irish soil. Everything seemed different this time. Instead of magical excitement of something new, it felt strange, but I knew it was home. Dad picked up our rental and drove us to the cottage. We'd take care of my school stuff later. We stopped at Fiona's and knocked on her door. Lewis's mom answered the door and smiled. Welcome back. We didn't expect to be here so soon. Thanks for calling me. Mom went in and sat next to Fiona. His mom looked over at me. Lewis will be home later tonight if you'd like to find him. Thank you. Part of me wasn't sure if I was quite ready to see him, but the rest of me was screaming to go find him right now. Instead, we took all but one of my bags inside. I'd stay with my parents in the smaller cottage until they left, then stay in Fiona's cottage for the rest of the time. There wasn't much else to do right then, so I unpacked my bags into the dresser and wardrobe that had been put in the room for me. I'd have to ask Fiona if it was okay to hang pictures before I did any decorating. My window looked out onto Fiona's fields that were now lined with crops. A tractor ran along the rows, and I had to wonder if it was Lewis or his dad. I knew it would be better to wait until I knew for sure that he was home, but I couldn't. I grabbed a sweater from my wardrobe and headed downstairs. I'm going for a walk. My parents answered, but I didn't hear what they said. I had to stop and orient myself, so I'd know which direction I needed to go, then made a beeline for the tractor. Heidi! Lewis's voice came from behind me. I whipped around and my breath caught. He stood there holding a bucket of feed in one hand, a look of surprise on his face. Hi, I was going to call, but... I couldn't get any more out because he swept me up in his arms and brought his lips to mine. It was as if the last few months hadn't happened. The words I'd wanted to say to him were gone as we held each other. He pulled away and cupped my face with his hands. "What are you doing here?" "I'm going to school here. And taking care of Fiona. I just didn't want to tell you until I knew for sure." "I was sure you'd forgotten about me." He kissed my forehead. Guilt spread through me. "I'm sorry. I just had to know if coming back was the right thing to do. I didn't want anything else influencing my decision." Lewis was silent for a moment. "I suppose that was the right thing to do, but I wish you told me first." "I should have. I'm sorry." Lewis stepped away and took my hand in his. "It seems we have an audience. Perhaps we should continue this conversation at another time." Mom and Dad stood on the porch with Lewis's mom, not bothering to pretend like they weren't spying. I glared at them, and Mom held her hands up in surrender before going back inside. "They're only here for the week, and then we'll have plenty of time together. That is, if you want to after I kept ignoring you. I'm sorry about that." Lewis ran his thumb along my cheek. "All I care about is that you're here now. I worried I'd never see you again." I wrapped my arms around his neck. "We'll see if you feel that way by the time school starts in the fall." He leaned down and pulled me in for another kiss. Challenge accepted. About the author. Jacqueline is an Idaho farm girl who grew up loving to read. She developed a love for writing at a young age and published her first book in 2013. She met her husband, Steve, at BYU, and they have 6 happy, crazy children who encourage her to keep writing. After owning a bookstore and running away to have adventures in Australia, they settled back down in their home in Utah. Jacqueline now spends her days herding her kids to various activities and trying to remember what she was supposed to do next. Her books include the Lost in a Fairy Tale series, Endless, Timeless, Fearless, and Limitless, Magicians of the Deep, Leanna, Keela, and the Lux series, which helped feed her obsession with all things Irish. You can learn more about her at www.jacquelinewiest.com. The end. This has been My Secret Good Luck Charm, written by Jacqueline Wiest, narrated by Callie Manon.